Hi everyone, I'm Dave and I love movies. So, welcome to my podcast, The Reaction Shot. In each episode, I'll dive deep into a movie of any genre that holds a special place in my heart. But here's the twist. I bring on a guest who has never seen that movie before, until now. We discuss, dissect, and review from pre to post-production to behind-the-scenes stories and well into its impact on pop culture. Will we agree on everything, or will we have wildly different views? Thanks for hitting play. Let's roll tape and find out. Fade in. Hey everyone, welcome back to The Reaction Shot. Here we are, episode 20. All right, today, joining me again is my dear friend, Lauren. Lauren, what's going on?
Oh, nothing. Excited to talk about Freddy, Fred.
Freddy. Yes, guys, that's our topic today is A Nightmare on Elm Street. Nightmare on Elm Street, one of my, definitely like in some of my top favorite movies, and definitely like probably top 5 favorite horror movies. There's so much nostalgia that goes around this film for me, and obviously for very many people. So I was pretty excited to get to do this. It is also the 40th anniversary of the release of the film here over the span of the next 2 weeks, I believe. So that's pretty awesome. 40 years of Freddy Krueger's origins. Well, Lauren, as always, I have to ask, what is your history with A Nightmare on Elm Street?
Absolutely nothing. I mean, I feel like I say the same thing to every movie.
That's okay. I mean, so are you familiar at all with, obviously you know who Freddy Krueger is. I'm sure that wasn't like a...
I mean,
you're not.
I've heard the name Freddy Krueger, but like I couldn't put a villain face to a name. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
I'm like a guy with a mask. Like I watched Halloween the other week, and I'm like, oh, that's that's Halloween. So
Wow.
it's really pathetic, but
no, it's not pathetic. I just, I talk about this often, is that the reason why I wanted to do this podcast, because I think I'm so in love with movies and pop culture type stuff that when I talk about Freddy Krueger nonchalantly, like say with you, I assume that you're picturing, Freddy Krueger in your head and Robert Englund and, his melted face running around with the knife glove and things like that. So it blows my mind that people don't know that stuff, but obviously that's okay. And that's also understandable because not everyone pays attention to those types of things. And I think I like to welcome people into those worlds, and that's why I love doing this. So, but I didn't realize you had no idea about Freddy Krueger in general.
Obviously, I've heard Freddy Krueger, but I didn't know he was the guy with like the striped sweater. Wow. I didn't put 2 and 2 together, and I don't even think I put 2 and 2 together that Freddy Krueger and A Nightmare on Elm Street is like the same thing.
Gotcha.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that just, it blows my mind just because I pretty much grew up on this franchise as well, because they shot these movies out really quick. They got up to the 7th entry of the series. I'm sorry, 6th entry of the series by 1994, I believe.
Oh, wow.
So in 10 years, we had six Freddy films.
Wow.
Like, that's insane. Yeah. So, my history with A Nightmare on Elm Street, of course, is obviously I'm a huge fan. But I saw the movie when I was 8 years old.
Everything started for you at 8 years old.
Yeah, I think I feel like between 6 and 8, I kind of like discovered that I really liked movies, and I kind of wanted to see everything. And I had like this weird fascination with like scary shit. So I don't remember exactly my first watch of the film, but one of my early memories of watching the film. I was watching it again, and it was like the middle of the day. My mom was home, and she was in the kitchen. And the way our house was set up, the kitchen was on the other side of the wall of the living room, so you can kind of hear like whatever was on the television. So I was watching Nightmare on Elm Street, and it was the sex scene. You don't see anything, but you hear it, and it's very very vocal. So I remember my mom was talking on the phone, and I'm watching it, and I hear her kind of like put the phone to the side. She's like, "What are you watching out there?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's Nightmare on Elm Street. They're not showing anything. They're not showing anything." So I said, "Oh, whew, I was safe." But again, I mean, I've said it a million times before. I mean, I definitely watched these movies fairly young, but I'm grateful for it. They didn't fuck me up or anything. So I'd like to think I'm not some twisted psychopath. I hope you can agree as well.
I just don't know if to me, I'm like, was I not scared of this movie because it's an 80s movie, and that's just, it's not like as terrifying to watch?
True.
Or I don't know, or am I just that getting used to everything? I don't know.
Honestly, Lauren, I think you're getting used to stuff.
After art, I'm fine with anything.
I was gonna say, if you've mastered Terrifier, like together we've done Terrifier 1, Terrifier 2, and we'll get into it on a different episode, of course, but you went to go see Terrifier 3 in theaters. So kudos to you. You were highly intoxicated though.
Oh my God, I was so drunk.
Perfect. Well, we will save the Terrifier 3 discussion for a Terrifier 3 episode. I'll have you watch it one more time just so you kind of absorb all the information. But
I definitely need a rewatch because I kind of fell asleep on some part of it. So
oh boy. All right, yeah. So we'll definitely do that Terrifier 3 episode. But yes, if you've mastered Art the Clown, and all of his practical effects, all the blood and gore, I think that you can probably make it through most horror films. Nightmare on Elm Street is a huge inspiration for Damien Leone with Terrifier. So I actually I don't want to talk too much about Terrifier, but with the Nightmare on Elm Street kind of exploded in the 80s the same way Terrifier / Art the Clown is blowing up now, and for us, like currently. So Freddy Krueger just became this iconic character. He was on lunchboxes. He was on T-shirts and hats, and I mean everywhere. They made video games. Lauren, they even made a TV show of Freddy called Freddy's Nightmares. Yeah, so
the Nightmares.
Yeah, so they were kind of like, I would say maybe like, kind of like Tales from the Crypt. Like they were all like singular episodes. It would usually start off with Freddy, with Robert Englund playing Freddy, talking about
doing some in the TV show.
Yeah, I mean, but when we were in Freddy's Nightmares, though, Freddy wasn't involved. So he did like intros to the episodes and things like that, and they were like scary stories. So they would kind of like wrap.
Like, Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah, just like that. Yep.
Okay.
So I don't really know much about the show to really talk about it, but it was fairly popular too. And like I said, A Nightmare on Elm Street got so popular. Freddy Krueger was just everywhere. And I think in a way, it's obviously a great thing. I think at times also, though, it kind of makes it a little less exciting because it's just everywhere. And I kind of feel like that's how Art the Clown is right now. Like he's literally everywhere. And
literally.
And you kind of said like with Terrifier 3, you felt that Art became maybe a little goofier. Like you were like laughing more at times. Was that right? Yeah. So Freddy, if you continue watching the franchise, Freddy kind of becomes the same exact way. He has like these snappy one-liners. He's like super sarcastic. It's like kind of sadistic humor in a way too, but there just comes a point where he's almost like overly animated, where it becomes kind of goofy, and you're just like rooting for Freddy now as opposed to being scared of him.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that with Terrifier, we get our one last movie and they kind of just stop it, just so it doesn't kind of get too goofy. But Nightmare on Elm Street, real quick fun facts as we're talking about this side of it all. Freddy becomes such a main prominent character in the rest of the films, but he in fact only has 7 minutes of screen time in this movie.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and I feel like you don't really notice it per se because he's so prominent throughout the whole movie, but you never actually really see him that often. And usually most of the time when you do, it's more in the shadows and not very well lit. And yeah, he's not as prominent as he is in the other films, and he kind of becomes front and center in the other ones. So, but yeah. With that being said, I mean, do you feel like you would like to see more Freddy Krueger, like to see like where the franchise goes, or?
Yeah, I mean, when I was watching it, I was interested, and I can see myself watching more.
Cool. Perfect.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
there's a lot of entries that we can do together. So yeah. Cool. So A Nightmare on Elm Street, again, it came out in 1984, celebrating its 40th anniversary. It is a supernatural teen horror slasher film. It was written and directed by the iconic, rest in peace, Wes Craven. It had a very limited release at first. It opened in a few theaters throughout the United States, prominently New York and Los Angeles, on November 9th in 1984, and then ended up going everywhere on November 16th, 1984. So we're almost to that exact anniversary date, which is pretty awesome.
The day. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So the budget for the film was $1.8 million.
So more than Terrifier.
More than Terrifier. Yeah, and if you think about it, this is the 80s too. So that money was worth a lot more back then. Opening weekend, it made $1.3 million. So almost made its whole budget back, and ended up the worldwide gross of $25.9 million.
Oh, wow.
Now, yeah, so that number 25 obviously isn't like, we're not jumping into hundreds, but I mean, if you take that $1.8 million and you turn it into 25.9, I mean, hugely successful. And it did a lot for New Line Cinema, which is the company that produced it and distributed it. The fun part about that too is that New Line was, at the time, only a film company that would help like promote films. It was kind of like a backer for films. And this was its second movie that they were fully funding, producing, and releasing on their own. The first movie, I forget the name of it. However, it ran into a lot of issues in production, and the funding for the film ended up falling through. So they ended up releasing it direct to VHS, and a relic of the past.
Yeah.
And so they never actually had their theatrical window for it. And then this movie obviously made it to theaters. So they consider this one of their first films, and it was so successful that they ended up referring to New Line Cinema as the house that Freddy built.
Oh, I feel like I've heard that somewhere.
Sure. Yeah, it's New Line Cinema was around. It's produced tons of movies. I'm sure you've seen some movies with the New Line Cinema logo. Very wildly successful studio production company, especially in the early mid-90s as well. But yeah, like I said, it was really popular. They fast-tracked a sequel really quick too, so they were going to do whatever they could to get as much money from Freddy Krueger as possible. So when the movie came out, people loved it. It was really talked about in positive ways. People were very scared of it. They thought Freddy Krueger was frightening. People were talking about how they were actually scared to go to sleep.
Oh, wow.
They're so, when Psycho came out, a lot of people were like, oh man, I'm afraid to shower now because of Psycho. And it was kind of like the same with this, where people were like, well, I'm afraid to go to sleep because Freddy Krueger could be there. So, that's crazy. So Wes Craven wrote the film, of course. He tried to shop the film around for 3 years in its script format, and no movie studio was interested in it, like none at all. And it was that after 3 years when New Line Cinema came across it and was like, let's give this a go. But it's crazy because, I mean, if you think about these big movie studios, I think it was Paramount that said they thought the movie seemed to be too goofy and there was nothing there that would get audiences to go to the theater, and it would just like fizzle out. But just think about all these movie companies that
I
turned it
love
away.
when
They're probably
people
like,
get it wrong. I don't know why.
same.
It's love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a really good story that, it was like this little, essentially at the time, like a little indie film that he was trying to get made, and it became like so huge. But so he came up with the idea, Wes Craven came up with the idea for the movie from several newspaper articles printed in the LA Times about a group of Southeast Asian refugees, several who died during horrific nightmares.
What?
So he was reading these, so he was
Oh
reading
my
these
God.
articles, and he thought the story, well, not the story, but the article was super interesting that would make for a good film. But the articles that he was reading, so this group of people came to America to escape stuff that was going on, that, they wanted to come to America, get the hell out of there. And then after a year of arriving, 3 men had died, and each with the same situation during the cases. They were young, healthy men, but they woke up from dreams several times, having nightmares, sweating really bad, and they got to the point where they were afraid to go to sleep. They would tell friends and family and people around them, like, we don't want to go to sleep. There's something scary going on in our dreams, whatever.
Oh my God.
And all 3 of them died the same exact way. And so the autopsy results revealed that they had not died because of anything like heart failure or anything like that. And all they could simply say was they simply just died.
Okay.
So,
well, now this is getting freaky. Thanks, Dave.
you're so welcome. That's what I'm here for. This is the education hour.
God. So when did these articles, like in the 80s? This happened in the
Yeah,
80s? The
I think it
early
was early 80s. Yeah, probably late 70s, early 80s. But it was the lack of cause that really intrigued Wes Craven so much. Medical authorities have since called the phenomenon Asian death syndrome, a variant of sudden unexpected death syndrome, and Brugada syndrome. Probably said that wrong, but I tried.
You did.
But so sudden unexpected death syndrome, they'll refer to it as SUDS. But people just like die in their sleep. But the fact that in the article, these 3 men who didn't really know each other that well were all saying that they were having the same type of nightmares. As far as I know, there's no like record of what these nightmares were.
Yeah.
But Wes Craven loved that there was no like real story, like no real reason behind it all. So he took that idea and kind of spun it out into, the film that we know now.
Boy.
And
Backstory.
he really let loose on writing the screenplay. So he got inspiration from that. So as he was writing the script, he also got the inspiration for the character of Freddy from different aspects of his childhood. Fred Krueger was an actual schoolmate of Wes Craven, with whom he shared a paper route with, and the kid, Fred, bullied him all the time. So Wes Craven decided to write him into the film as, obviously, as the villain. And Wes Craven also, prior to Nightmare on Elm Street, had a film called The Last House on the Left. And one of the bad guys in that film's name was Krug, based off the same guy that used to bully him.
Can I just say I love that he made the villain in his movie his bully, like that. That's ultimate revenge. I love it.
Ultimate revenge, yes. Yeah. So I think that's pretty amazing too. He also used experience that he had during a time where he was, I don't know if he was at his house or what, but he was asleep and heard a noise outside. So he went to look out the window when he was younger. He went to look out the window, and when he looked out the window, there was a man standing outside of his window. So he was like looking down at the street, and underneath the street light, there was a man staring up at him, and he was wearing the same type of hat that Freddy Krueger wears. And Wes Craven said he vividly remembers that man standing there and staring at him, thought that and he was kind of ominous in the light, and the way the hat was kind of like put a big shadow over most of his face, so he couldn't like really make the guy out. So this freaked Wes Craven out, and he like immediately hid, like ducked away from the window. And when he went back to peek out the window again, that man was still standing there staring at him.
Oh my God, I just got the chills.
Yeah, so he said he never forgot that hat, and that's how he incorporated the hat into the storyline as well, and just thought that creepy man hiding in the shadows, which is what Freddy does through most of this film, was all part of that. So yeah, he wrote the screenplay using all these different inspirations, and we got this pretty amazing movie. So.
Okay, the backstory is making it too real for me. Oh my gosh. No, I'm
One,
scared.
two, Freddy's come. You should turn your light off in there.
No.
I almost said turn your life off. That's awkward.
No, I'm gonna keep my lights on.
Oh, okay. That's fine. You can. Freddy still
Yeah.
shows up in the
I'm gonna
light
watch
too.
Seinfeld to fall asleep now.
Oh man, I love it. So in the original script as well, Wes Craven wrote Freddy as a child molester. So there was a bigger backstory than what we ended up getting in the original final cut of the film. But he was a molester, and the parents found out and killed him. Thus, we learn in the actual film. But during that time, there was a lot of accusations of child molestation happening in California. So Wes Craven thought it was in poor taste to put that type of film out there while all this was happening in the limelight. Yeah. So he didn't want people to think that he was mocking such a serious conversation. So he decided to rework it and just had him as he would just stalk these kids and then kill the kids.
Kill them, so, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It is though later in the franchise they do kind of hint at the molestations part, and then there was also a very, 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 very awful remake in 2010, and they lean into the molestation aspects of it all as well.
You really hate this remake.
I do really hate this remake. And you know what? I've given it several tries. In fact, I even tried to watch it the other day.
Really?
I love the opening scene. I think the opening scene is fantastic. And I remember when the film came out, I was so excited because I love Freddy Krueger. Nightmare on Elm Street franchise is not necessarily the best franchise as a whole, but it's a fun time regardless. But this film, they try to make it way more serious. So they try to get the tone back of the original film, which I gave credit to them for. But the execution is awful. Jackie Earle Haley is the guy who played Freddy Krueger in the remake, and I don't want to say that he did a bad job, but he took away the essence of what made Freddy Freddy. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
He had a couple cool one-liners in the film that I was like, oh, that's a great Freddy line, but it's just the delivery of him. He almost took it into a voice, and I know you've only seen the first Nightmare on Elm Street. I would assume a lot of people listening to this have probably seen most of the franchise, but like I told you, Freddy becomes more of a main character, so he talks a lot more, and the way that Robert Englund puts his mannerisms and his voice and how animated he is, all of that was just gone. It was just this ominous evil villain, which is fine, but they try to make his face look way more realistic, but it was also fully CGI. So I don't know. I can sit here and just rip the shit out of this film. But
sounds like you already are doing that.
Yeah, and then there's one of the many iconic scenes in this OG 1984 film. One of my favorite little moments is when Nancy is lying in bed and Freddy Krueger kind of comes in through the wall. And then he goes back. I always thought when I was a kid, that was a really cool effect. Also thought it was kind of fucking creepy. But they do it in the new film, of course, so they try to recreate that scene, but it's fully CGI and it looks so fake. And you can see every little crevice of Freddy's face when he does it. And I just, no, I don't know. But
CGI, I have a hate relationship with.
I hate indeed. It's I understand that sometimes CGI is helpful and beneficial. I think if it's done correctly and not overdone, I'm okay with it. But I think that's what makes Terrifier so great, is that they use 99% 99.9% all practical effects, and it still works regardless if at times, even at times, it does look a little goofy. It still has way more of a realistic effect than some fake blood spewing out.
And it's like, it reminds me of, like, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, but like, there were the original movies, and then he re-released them before he made like the prequels, and he put CGI. George Lucas put CGI in like the original movies, and I'm like, this looks so dumb. So that was like my first introduction to CGI, and ever since then I freaking hate it.
No, kind of similar with Spielberg's E.T. They did a re-release for one of the anniversaries, and he recut in some of the deleted scenes. He like put them throughout the film, so kind of like cut everything back in. But he used CGI for a lot of the mannerisms of E.T. and even used some of the scenes from the original film. He gave a lot more CGI characteristics to E.T.'s face, and it didn't look good.
Did not. Keep it the way it is. The only CGI thing I will defend is when they CGI animals, because I don't, how I feel about animals being in film.
Yeah.
Like those horses and what's it called? Hereditary.
The Ring. Oh, Hereditary.
The Ring. No, The Ring.
Yeah.
Yeah, The Ring.
Yep. The Ring. The Ring and the horses. Yeah, that scarred you for life, didn't it?
I still think about it.
You're always
all the time.
Those horses just jumping off the ledge, and
that was so freaky. Yeah.
I love it. Cool. So A Nightmare on Elm Street has a pretty great cast, and obviously I want to talk about them. So we have as our lead character our final girl. Lauren, do you remember what a final girl is? Remember when I gave you like the little tutorial of final girl?
She's the one that stays alive.
Yeah, she's the one that stays alive. She's the one that battles. She's the one that battles. Yeah. So she she battles the bad guy. She wins, and a lot of the times women are written as weak characters, and we have a lot of we fortunately have a lot of men who do write women into their stories to be the badass queens that they are. And Heather Langenkamp is definitely one of our final girls. She plays Nancy Thompson in this film. We have Amanda Weiss as Tina. We have Nick Corey as Rod. We have Ronnie Blakely as Marge Thompson, and that is Nancy's mom. We have John Saxon as Lieutenant Thompson. That is Nancy's dad. Then we have Johnny Depp in his first film ever as Glenn.
Yes.
And then rounding out the cast, we have the iconic, always remembered as Freddy Krueger, Robert Englund. Amazing actor. He will always be remembered as Freddy Krueger. I think it'll be very hard for someone to step into the role of Freddy Krueger. Obviously, in the remake, we had someone step into that role, and that was Jackie Earle Haley. Fun fact about that, this is kind of like a full circle moment. Johnny Depp accompanied his friend Jackie Earle Haley to auditions for the 1984 film A Nightmare on Elm Street. So Jackie Earle Haley was really good friends with Johnny Depp and wanted to audition for this new film called A Nightmare on Elm Street. So Johnny Depp tagged along with him. Instead of Haley being... Yep. So Johnny Depp was spotted by Wes Craven and asked him if he would like to read for the part. Obviously, Johnny Depp ended up getting the part for the film, and Jackie Earle Haley did not. So then 26 years later, when they did the remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street, Jackie Earle Haley ended up playing Freddy Krueger. But right before he went to go film, so he signed on to play Freddy, and before he went on to go play Freddy Krueger, Jackie Earle Haley watched this original 1984 Nightmare on Elm Street film the day before he started shooting. and is on record saying that was the dumbest fucking movie I've ever watched.
Oh my God.
So why would you go into one? Why would you say that about a film that obviously fans are looking forward to you honoring? Like, even if you hated it, I just feel like saying that super disrespectful because you're taking over, I've said it a million times, an iconic character and someone who has only been played by one person, and you shit all over it before you start, filming for the role. And like, did you not have any idea of like the backs? Like, I just don't understand that at all. And
Bitter much? Like, honestly, he's just, I need to look up
yeah,
this guy because would I recognize him, do you think?
probably he's been in a lot of stuff. He's actually a really good actor. Like, I don't want to take that away from him. He's actually in this movie called Little Children with Kate Winslet. Phenomenal film. I suggest you watch it. It's a very heavy film, though. There's a lot of heavy subject matter.
I love Kate Winslet.
Yeah.
Okay, I kind of reckon, I don't know. What was he? Nightmare on Elm Street and Bad News Bears. I don't know. No, I don't really recognize him, no.
Well, you know what? He doesn't like 1984's Nightmare on Elm Street, so we don't like you.
He's just bitter that he didn't get the part.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
It's okay. Yeah. So Robert Englund was actually not the first choice for the role of Freddy Krueger. He had initially wanted a stuntman to play the part, but upon testing several different stuntmen and kind of getting more character development of Freddy as, right before they started filming, he realized that he wanted an actual actor to play the part, especially because Freddy would be speaking at times and wanted him to be a little bit more animated. So Wes Craven, this was coming after the OG Halloween. It's coming after Friday the 13th. So he thought it was a cool idea to have a villain that would actually speak as opposed to be just behind a mask and not talking at all. So
let's let the audience about that.
Okay. Oh, I like that. So you just watched the original Halloween for the first time, correct? You mentioned that?
I did, but I also fell asleep.
Okay, well, if you learned anything from A Nightmare on Elm Street, is stop falling asleep. I mean, that's...
I know, but the wine had gotten to me. This seems to be a theme, and it seems like, but I'm not a wino, I promise.
No, it's fine. Yeah, you need a little liquid courage to get through these horror films. So
I was on vacation when I watched Halloween. Of course, you're gonna have a few drinks, And then I was so nervous to see Art the Clown in a theater that I had to have liquid courage. So really, it's these instances are, I don't know, I'm ashamed.
It's okay. But you made it through A Nightmare on Elm Street without falling asleep.
Without falling asleep and without any liquid courage, yes.
Look at you. Look at you. See? Growth. We love growth. One last thing about Johnny Depp is Wes Craven really liked him. He tested. He wanted him to be in the film. But from my understanding, it came down to two people. So it came down to Johnny Depp and someone else. And it was Wes Craven's daughters who picked Johnny Depp to be the character because they said he's beautiful.
Yeah.
So that's who they wanted. And then Heather Langenkamp beat over 200 actresses that auditioned for Nancy Thompson. I do have a very small list of a couple of big names.
Yeah, I want to hear them.
So for you can take I'm going to say a name, and I want you and whoever's listening to take a second to think about how this person would be in the film. And on a scale of 1 to 5, tell me if you think 5 being she would be a better Nancy, and 1 being like that's stupid as hell.
Okay, I'm ready.
Jennifer Grey.
As in Dirty Dancing, Jennifer Grey? 1.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Demi Moore.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, maybe a 5 for that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not taking away from Heather Langenkamp because, this is your role, girl. By all means, hold on to it. But I think Demi Moore would be a good choice if Heather Langenkamp didn't work out.
Yeah.
Next one is Tracy Gold from Growing Pains.
Oh, one. I can't see
Yeah.
that at all.
Nope. And then the next one, we're getting back into Wes Craven territory. Courtney Cox.
Oh my gosh. Wow. So she was like on the short list of actors. Yeah.
Yeah, she would have been pretty young. She would have been like 18 or 19, I think. Because that was 10 years before Friends.
I don't think this role would have showed her range.
Sure.
You know?
I agree. Yeah, I feel like I could throw her like a 3.
Yeah.
I could see it, but maybe not be whatever. I don't know. But I don't know if that would have been Courtney's first movie role. I didn't really look hardcore into it, but if it was her first movie role, if she had gotten the role and had been her first movie role, then she and Jennifer Aniston would have had one of their first major roles being in a horror film. So I thought that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, Jennifer Aniston's was what?
Leprechaun.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Leprechaun. I haven't seen it, but
yeah, you don't want to, and we're not going to talk about it.
Oh, that bad?
I mean, I don't like it. I think the first movie it has its fans. I've watched it a couple times. I love Jennifer Aniston, so I feel like I watch it only because of her. But overall, I don't know. I never really got excited about the Leprechaun movies, and I feel like that franchise went berserk. It went crazy.
Yeah. Was she in like the first one?
Yeah, just the first one. I mean, she does good. I mean, there's not really anything super exciting about it, but if you wanna something to throw on in the background and watch
folding my laundry.
Yeah. yeah. I love that. Yeah.
Was that actress who plays Nancy for real? Mm-hmm. Was she in any of the other ones, or is this the only one?
What a good question. Yes. So they fast-tracked the Nightmare on Elm Street 2 super fast, and Wes Craven did not want this to be a franchise. He wanted a Nightmare on Elm Street to be a standalone film. He wanted it to be a one-off movie, and of course, like any major movie studio, that didn't happen at all. So they decided to fast track Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and it came out literally 1 year later.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's a whole different cast. The only thing that is the same, other than Robert Englund, I apologize. Yes, Robert Englund is Freddy Krueger, of course. But other than that, no one's returning from the first film. And Wes Craven has nothing to do with the second one. Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah. I'm serious. Yep, I'm serious. Yeah, he has nothing to do with the second one. And okay, so this is the 40th anniversary of A Nightmare on Elm Street, but I do want to talk about the franchise as a whole as well. A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 is called Freddy's Revenge, and it follows a teenager and his parents and his little sister. They live in Nancy's house now on Elm Street.
Gotcha.
It's Freddy ends up kind of possessing this guy, and in order for him to get into the real world in this film, he literally uses this guy's body as a host and comes out of the body. So Nightmare on Elm Street 2 has people absolutely love it or absolutely fucking hate it. It's also considered one of the gayest non-gay films ever. Lauren, it's crazy.
Is it?
Yeah, so the actor in A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, he is gay in real life, but in the film he's a straight guy, and he also has this girl he's obsessed with and wants to be. But there are just all these things that happen in the film that are literally, as a gay man, I'm saying this with respect, but there are so many gay underlying things that happen in this film, and so many innuendos. It feels like you're watching a gay horror film. I don't even know how to explain it. So Mark Patton is the actor who plays the main guy, and it's an experience.
You should watch it.
Yeah, we could do a whole episode on it because there's so much controversy around things that happen and the making of the movie, and whatever. And again, people absolutely love it or absolutely hate it. And they even did a whole documentary on just the second one. And it's called Scream Queen, and it follows Mark Patton, and 90% of it's about the movie, but also kind of follows Mark Patton a little bit, and just talks about like how the film got made and all that stuff. But it's so they did that, and then the movie did good. It didn't do as well as the first one, but it still did good. So of course they were like, let's make a third one. And so when the third one got greenlit, that's when Wes Craven was like, okay, I can be a part of this one. So it got greenlit for a third one, and Wes Craven co-wrote the screenplay and came up with the story. And this Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is considered to a lot of people, considered the best sequel out of all the movies. That one is called Dream Warriors, and Nancy is back in Dream Warriors.
She's in it? Oh.
She is in it, yep. And it follows a mental institution. And so Nancy is actually, it's been a while since I watched it. I feel like she's a psychiatrist or like a dream doctor for this place. If I got that wrong, I'm sorry, but she's doing something similar to that. She kind of like a counselor for these people in this mental institution that are having bad dreams and all these, things happening to them. So she's kind of like the mother of all of them, like trying to help them through and understanding. And Patricia Arquette is actually the main character.
Aww. Okay.
Yeah. And
there's some watching these for sure.
Yeah, the third one is really good. And then the fourth one came out called The Dream Master. And then after that, we had A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, which is The Dream Child. Fancy. And then number 6 is Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare.
That one, it's not.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, definitely not. There's a cameo in that one from Roseanne Barr.
Okay, so I need to watch these, I think.
Yes, yeah, you do. They're like I said, all of them aren't necessarily great films, but they're fun. Freddy Krueger is a fun character. Each one has its own like moments. It has some scary moments, some funny moments, and then it kind of gets pulled back. And Nightmare on Elm Street 7 is called Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
He put his name in it?
Mm-hmm. So Wes Craven's New Nightmare is the 7th entry of the film series, and that one came out in 1994, I believe. So that would have been, 1994. So that's the one that would have came out literally 10 years to the day of the original one. So 7 movies in 10 years. Like that's how this franchise just like took off and was everywhere.
My God, that's like a lot of work to put that many movies out in that short of a time. Like, that's crazy.
And again, Robert Englund is in all of them as Freddy Krueger, and I believe it's 3 hours it takes for him to get in all of his prosthetics and things like that. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that's a lot of devotion to this character. I mean, obviously he does a great job. It's well worth it. But the really interesting thing about A New Nightmare, I will say on the record that A New Nightmare is actually probably my favorite film of the franchise, or runner up to the original one. Obviously, there's a love for the original one because that's the origin. But New Nightmare actually takes a very interesting concept, and I'm going to talk about it for a minute because I think it was a great idea. So this was before Scream. Scream came out in 96. So this was 1994. Wes Craven came up with an idea, and he was like, how can I get a Nightmare on Elm Street? How can I make Freddy scary again? Because at this point in time, like I said, Freddy was kind of a cartoonish acting character. People were rooting for him. So Craven's like, how do I make him scary again? So he came up with this idea that a very meta idea that this film is about Heather Langenkamp Heather Langenkamp is getting asked to be Nancy Thompson one more time. So the film is in the real world, and
Oh.
she's not playing Nancy. She's actually Heather Langenkamp. Wes Craven is
Uh-huh.
actually Wes Craven, and she's an actress who was in a film franchise called A Nightmare on Elm Street. And she is
That's
married,
so
she has
weird.
kids,
Yeah.
and it's such an interesting concept. And the reason I brought Scream up is because Scream obviously is very meta too, because they
Uh-huh.
how they would talk about films and things like that, like oh no, we're actually living in a horror film. So the film follows Wes Craven's idea. So this is the storyline of the film. Wes Craven wants to make Freddy scary again, so he writes a screenplay called New Nightmare. But he's having a problem writing the script because he's actually having bad dreams, and Freddy Krueger's haunting him in his dreams.
So
But
he's in it and acting.
he can't get the idea. He's not in it a lot, but he
Yeah.
can't get the idea onto paper. But he wants to make sure that if he does finish the script, that Heather Langenkamp will return for Nancy one last time.
Uh-huh.
So Heather Langenkamp is she's married. She has a husband who does special effects for a film, and they're actually working on a glove for the idea of this new Freddy Krueger movie coming out. And they have a son named Dylan. I think he's like 6 years old in the movie. Uh, Dylan is recently watched the original Nightmare on Elm Street against his mom's. She didn't want Heather Langenkamp didn't want him to watch it, so he watches it, and now Freddy's haunting him, and it creates this idea where Freddy's actually a dream demon, and by all this energy, it's actually making this demon come into the real world, and it's taking on the face of Freddy Krueger.
Huh.
It's
Interesting.
and Freddy is scary again. Like Freddy, he looks a little different. It looks a little bit more devilish.
Uh-huh.
He's a little bit more sinister. The kills are a little bit crazier, but it's so cool because Robert Englund's in the movie too. They're on like a talk show, and he's dressed up as Freddy Krueger, and he comes through the wall. He has the glove on. He's like full character. The audience is all dressed as Freddy Krueger, and they're like cheering for him. And he's like, "Hey Heather, what's going on? You ready to make another movie?" And it's pretty cool.
That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like maybe I didn't sell it the best way, but uh,
No,
yeah,
you did.
but it was just a really cool concept. It was a cool way to like breathe something new into the franchise, and
Uh-huh.
I think they pulled off really well. I actually watched that one a lot. I find it very interesting, and it's a fun time, and it's scary again.
Is
There's
it
a scene that
scary?
takes place in the closet. I don't want to give it away because I want you
Yeah,
to
don't
watch it, and
give
I
it
want you to
away.
like.
Yeah.
But there's a closet scene, and you'll know when you see it. But the first time I watched it, I actually jumped, and I was actually in Columbus, where I live now. I was actually in
Mm-hmm.
Columbus at my cousin's house, and we watched it. And I actually had a bad dream that night. And that scene, I kept thinking about the closet scene. Creeped me out.
Oh my God.
And it's not even like a big scene. Like it literally is like a 15-second scene. But I don't know why that always just stuck out to me. And yeah, so
Yeah,
look out for a new night.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm gonna keep watching.
got a lot of good movies to watch there, Lauren.
I do. I have so many.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess we can talk about the where we stand with what people think of A Nightmare on Elm Street. Rotten Tomatoes, we're at a 94% from critics, and by users, we are at an 84%. Metacritic, we're at a 76 out of 100, and from the users on Metacritic, we're at an 8.2 out of 10. On Letterboxd, we're at a 3.7 out of 5. And on Internet Movie Database, we're on a 7.4 out of 10. Lauren, what
Yeah.
is your reaction to A Nightmare on Elm Street?
Boy.
Where are you? Where do you fall?
I'm like 5.25.
5.25. That's very specific. I love it.
Because I like it, 5 is like the norm, and I like it a
Sure.
little bit better than that.
There's a tiny bit more.
It's a
My
tiny bit more.
Well, my goal is to make that a 6 by the end of this episode. With that being said, I give A Nightmare on Elm Street an 8 out of 10.
It's like your top 5.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely my top. My friend got these horror movie coasters made for me. They're like etched into the coasters, like someone like handmade these, and she could get 4 made, and she wanted them to be horror movie villains that I love. And she's like, I really had to think of like who your 4 favorite are. And of course, Freddy was one of them. So do you know who my 4 would be, Lauren? So we have Freddy Krueger. So who the other 3 are?
Oh, your favorite villains?
Yeah, horror movie icon.
Ghostface.
So that's 2. So Freddy, Ghostface.
Would I know the other 2?
Yeah.
I would.
These were made like 6 years ago. So like Art the Clown and stuff like that. Like none of that is part of it.
Oh, I was going to say Art the Clown. WTF. Okay.
Sorry.
But I would know them.
Do you know? Yeah. Yeah.
Jason. I don't know. Who's Jason?
So it's Jason's Friday the 13th.
Michael Myers.
Yep. Michael Myers. Yep. So we have Freddy Krueger, Ghostface, Michael Myers, and there's one more.
Oh God.
Who's my other favorite person that like I love? Started off scary, kind of went goofy.
Started off scary, kind of went goofy.
I dressed as him a couple of years ago for Halloween.
Am I gonna kick myself when you tell me?
Probably.
I'm like Superman.
Oh no.
Just kidding.
Who's the villain in Superman, Lauren?
The Joker? Is that it?
No. I think half the people listening to this just turned off the episode.
No, that's Batman. I know that.
It's Batman.
Superman, I don't know, actually.
Lex Luthor.
I knew that because I watched Supernatural. No, not Supernatural. What was that called?
Smallville. She's mixing all of this up. She's trying, though. That's what we love.
I did watch Smallville, though.
I love Smallville.
I did not watch Supernatural. I watched Smallville.
I actually didn't either.
Gosh, am I gonna know this? Give me like a hint. Give me like a one of the actors in it.
I'm trying to think of. Okay. Jennifer Tilly.
Okay, I have no idea. You gotta tell me.
Chucky.
Oh, right. Freaking Chucky. I will never watch those, I don't think. I don't think so.
Music to my ears. We'll definitely watch it.
I mean, I would love to watch it.
There you go. That's the enthusiasm I love. What do you have against Chucky? Why don't you want to watch it?
I don't know. The doll thing, I feel like could happen.
Boy, I thought you were going to say the opposite. They're going to be like, that's so stupid.
No, I feel like the doll thing, I feel like it could actually happen.
Oh, boy.
I'm just kidding. Or am I?
Or you're not. It's fine. Yeah. A couple years ago, I dressed as Chucky, and
that's right.
I went to our. Yeah, I had like the big Chucky wig, and I went to one of my friends' house for their Halloween party, and I decided when I walked through the door that I was going to be in character of Chucky the entire time.
And were you?
I never broke character. And Chucky's like an asshole. Like he's just like a dick. Like he's not nice to people. Like the things that he says, obviously, then he kills them. But like the whole time I was like, fuck you, man, you fucking idiot. Like I was talking like him. I was like saying things that he says. And one of the guys that was there would keep like coming near him, be like, you better get the fuck away from me. Like you stop getting close to me. You're creepy as hell. So that was a good time.
Also, like, when does Chucky take place? Like, what year is that doll? Is that like a 70s doll?
So the movie came out in 1988.
88. Okay.
Yep. And there are seven Chucky movies and 3 seasons of a TV show.
Oh, is that still on?
It actually just got canceled, but it's fine. We don't need to talk about that.
Okay. All right. Well, Chucky, you are real. So
Chucky is real. He's all right. Well, we got a little sidetracked, but Freddy is amongst. No, you're good. No, so Freddy is obviously amongst these horror icons, and we do have the Michael Myers. Michael Myers came before Freddy. Chucky came after. Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th is obviously another iconic one. And then Ghostface, of course, came in 1996. So we have these big legends, and Freddy is definitely at the top. Like I said, top 4 probably to most people, and probably even like top 2 or 3. So everyone to an extent knows who Freddy Krueger is. Even if they haven't seen the movies, they've seen his face, or they know about his glove, or whatever it might be. And he's still very much alive in pop culture. People still very much talk about him. And, everyone kind of wants Robert Englund to do one last Freddy Krueger role. So he pretty much says all the time, like, I'm too old to do that shit. But
wait, Robert?
Yeah.
He was in Stranger Things, was he not?
He was. So Stranger Things was actually inspired by Nightmare on Elm Street, and the last season that we had that Robert Englund was in, a lot of that does a lot of callbacks to Nightmare on Elm Street.
Okay, well, now I have to rewatch it.
Yeah, like when I heard that Robert Englund was going to be out, because there were things throughout the series, I'm like, oh, this kind of reminds me of Nightmare on Elm Street. Like the Upside Down is kind of like that dream world and things like that. So the creators, the Duff brothers who created Stranger Things, actually talk about how that was really like an inspiration for some of the things that happen in the film, or in the show. So
yeah.
Nightmare on Elm Street just making waves, Yeah, I mean, Robert Englund's he's been on like guest stars on different TV shows. He'll dress up as Freddy, and he does a lot of Comic-Con conventions. I actually met him and Heather Langenkamp, and they were super nice. And he wore his glove in the picture that we took together, and he laughed like Freddy, like he really got into character, and that's pretty cool. So
that's cute.
Yeah. So that's cute. So with A Nightmare on Elm Street, the movie almost folded before production had even begun. So initially, this production company called Smart Egg was supposed to give them $1 million to continue like putting funds into the film to make it. But they ended up dropping out several days before the filming began, and producer Robert Shea had to try to raise money elsewhere. 2 weeks into shooting, the production had no money, and they weren't even able to pay the crew or the cast or anything.
Oh my God.
2 weeks into filming. Can you imagine like being on a film and there's being like, well, we can't pay you? Like,
would you just
crazy.
Do it anyway if like you're trying to break into the biz?
For sure. I think at that time, Wes Craven had a decent name for himself at the time of making pretty awesome horror films, and I think Robert Shea, who was the head of New Line, was very eager to get this film made. Like he had a lot of faith into it. So 2 weeks into the filming, they weren't able to pay people. Line producer of the film, his name was John H. Burroughs. He used a credit card to try to get some funding, but eventually Robert Shea brokered a deal with a European company called Media Home Entertainment, and they ended up persuading Smart Egg to end up putting in $200,000, and that's all they needed to complete the film and pay the people. So it all ended up working out, but I'm sure it was like sweat and bullets there for some point in time. And yeah. So during this, like when Wes Craven wrote the screenplay and like described Freddy Krueger, he talked about the sweater that Freddy's wearing. Obviously, we know it as the red and green sweater that Freddy wears, but in the script, it was actually written as red and yellow. However, Wes Craven read an article in Scientific American, which sounds like a really exciting magazine. In 1982, it said that the two most contrasting colors to the human retina are red and green. So Wes Craven thought it would be a cool idea to put those red and green colors together and kind of create that symbolic.
Like red and yellows to McDonald's,
Yeah, that's true. I actually didn't think about that. Yeah, Ronald McDonald running around haunting your dreams. Creep.
That's actually a little scarier.
I know, right? I feel like at some point in time that's probably going to be a horror movie. But
it has to be.
Just like how they're doing like the horror movie of Winnie the Pooh and Pinocchio and Peter Pan. Yeah.
Oh.
Wild. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Cool. All right.
Someone needs to make the McDonald's one.
Hey, let's get together and write a script.
I'm in.
Let's do it.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Let's talk a little bit about this movie. We'll dive into a little bit. I think going literally scene by scene is going to be a little aggressive because this film is so popular, but I definitely want to kind of like get the story out, and we can talk about some pretty cool moments and stuff. But The film starts with New Line Cinema logo on the screen, which at the time was actually really awesome logo. I know that sounds really fucking nerdy, but it just says New Line on the screen. It's being written by like red lasers, and it's like it looks like a horror movie production company for sure. But New Line ended up taking on what became their logo, which was the film strips. And yeah, again, I'm on my nerdy shit, but
you are.
Yeah, so I don't even know why I'm going to say this, but I'll watch movies and like a film production company logo will start like sometimes like it like designs on the screen or whatever, and I'll be like, oh, this is Spyglass, or oh, this is whatever other random ass production company, Phoenix Pictures.
You watch like the little nuances between each, like when I watch a TV show, like the intro, like I like to notice the difference between seasons. I bet that's like you with like the logos.
Oh, absolutely. You don't think I can watch seasons of Friends and be like, oh, this is season 4 just based on the opening? Season 4. Oh, this is season 8. Nerd alert.
Nerd
alert. So the film starts with a cropped picture. We're getting the credits and everything, and this is actually Freddy Krueger putting together his glove, creating that iconic knived glove. What do you think of this glove, Lauren? So you didn't really know much about Freddy, right? And
no.
Did you know about this glove?
I didn't know about the glove.
Okay. What do you think about the glove?
Yeah. It's like a little cat, you know?
Look. Okay. Well, hey, look at you. So you actually just brought something up.
Oh, did I?
Okay. Yeah. So Wes Craven actually had the idea was originally for Freddy Krueger to have a what are those things called?
Talon?
No.
Nails? Acrylic nails.
Yeah. Yep. He haunts you with his fake press-on nails. Can you imagine?
Oh God.
I just pictured that scene from Family Guy where Peter's typing with the fake acrylic nails. It's like a really popular meme. Yeah. Well, regardless, I forget exactly what it was, but it was a sickle. He originally, I don't even know what word I was trying to think of, but yes. So he originally had Freddy Krueger with a sickle, but he didn't really think that it really worked. It wasn't like super scary. It wasn't like original, and he ended up coming to the idea of knives for fingers. And the reason he got that idea was because of how cats put their claws out and things like that. So he actually credits like a cat doing that as one of the reasons why he came up with that idea. So he ended up getting with someone who like drew a bunch of different artwork for the glove, and they decided on obviously what we ended up getting. So yeah, that was kind of interesting. So I love that you said the cat thing, because that was kind of his intention. But
well, I have a cat. Just love my life.
I have a cat. Well, that's where the idea of the knife glove came from. So you should probably be watching your back.
Well, he is kind of an asshole sometimes, but not like Freddy.
Not like Freddy.
No. Yeah.
But still an icon. Your cat's an icon.
Oh my God, yes.
So this opening scene, we're seeing him make the glove. He's taking parts of knives. He's welding together, bendable parts for him to slide in. And, I think it's definitely a pretty cool and original idea. And then we quickly get a Nightmare on Elm Street logo on the screen. And we quickly cut to who we think is either going to be the main character or the first death. And that is Tina. And Tina is in... Tina!
I don't know why I found that so funny.
I just love that Freddy's like, Tina. Tina! Every time I hear the name Tina, I want to do that. Like, Tina.
Well, and I like picture like Tina Belcher just being like, what?
What? What?
Or like, whatever she does.
Can you imagine if that was Tina's response to this film every time Freddy's like, oh, we just invented a comedy film. another random fact, Tina's name is mentioned 39 times throughout the course of the film.
Really?
Most of which is by Freddy. Yeah, Freddy's always taunting Tina and, using his Freddy voice. But Tina is in a nightgown and she is running down this really long corridor. Rain, there's like piping, it's foggy, and there's a random lamb that runs behind her. So when we had this opening scene, she's walking down this really long hallway. She's hearing someone say her name in like a really sinister type voice. She sees the lamb run, and she's still like in her nightgown, and she ends up walking into like a boiler room. When you were watching this, what were you thinking? I mean, I feel like it's kind of like it's kind of like a weird start if you're not used to this world or know what's happening.
I had no idea. I thought it had to be probably a dream. That's what I thought. I was like, this is weird. Yeah.
Yep. So yes, so we are in a dream, and I think this one cool thing this movie does is it doesn't tell us that we're in a dream, but it does things to let us know that we are in one of their dreams. So as the franchise goes on, they come up with really cool and clever ways to play with all that stuff. But Tina keeps hearing this like screeching sound, which is obviously the knives of Freddy's glove, and he's running it alongside the piping. It's making that really loud screechy sound, and in the background we can kind of see a person kind of stalking her more or less, and we obviously assume that this person is the one saying her name. And she kind of backs herself into part of the boiler room where there's all the flames and stuff, and she kind of stops, and all of a sudden Freddy jumps up behind her, and she screams top of her lungs, and she wakes up from her dream. So now we are in her bedroom. She's sweaty, and her mom enters the room because she heard her daughter scream, and she's like, "Whoa!" The mom's like, "Whoa, what's going on?" And Tina ends up looking down at her nightgown, and there's these 4 gashes,
It's a rip.
Right through her nightgown, and her mom says something along the lines of, "You better cut those nails or stop dreaming the way you're dreaming."
Like what person's nails? Unless
Can you imagine being in your sleep and just like tearing your nightgown with your nails. Your acrylic nails.
That's what I was gonna say.
So funny. So this was a great opening because we were kind of welcome to that dream world. We're obviously introduced to Tina, and we get the idea that something very strange is happening because Freddy was about to attack her in the dream. So obviously he went to go use his glove to thrash her, but he ends up just getting her nightgown, and she wakes up with those exact cuts in her nightgown. So that's interesting. We cut to and also hear these little girls playing jump rope, and they're saying 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. 3, 4, better lock your door. 5, 6, grab your crucifix. 7, 8, better stay up late. 9, 10, never sleep again. So cute little nursery rhyme. And that nursery rhyme was not in the script, and Heather Langenkamp's boyfriend at the time is actually credited for coming up with that little nursery rhyme.
Cute.
It's used throughout the entire franchise. So
wow.
Hopefully he asks for a payday.
Are they still together?
I don't think so. I mean, I have no idea, but that would be a pretty awesome story. They still are. I'm definitely going to look into that after
look into it.
After this episode. Yeah, I will let you know. So as we're seeing these little girls in like a creepy little nightgown, there's kind of like fog everywhere. So I assume that that is part of like the dream world. So we as an audience are kind of seeing that unfold. And because as we like pan away from that, there's a nice red car coming towards us, and we are introduced to our main group of friends, and that is our little high school friends. So we have obviously Nancy, Tina, Rod, and Glenn. And we get introduced to their friendship, their group, and I kind of think this is like a mix match group, don't you think?
It is.
Like I feel like they're like weird friends. Rod's obviously like the odd man out. He's so like aggressive. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. But with the scene, Tina's actually talking about her bad dream that she had last night, and Nancy's like, well, as a matter of fact, I actually had a bad dream last night too. And then I have to say these lines because I think it's stupid. But Rod's like, oh, I woke up with a heart on this morning. Right. And he says to Tina, he's like, it had your name written on it. And she said, Rod, there are 4 letters in my name. There's no way that would fit on your jaw.
That was funny.
And then,
that was funny.
Yeah, and then his comeback to that is up yours with a twirling lawnmower. So guys, Lauren, everyone, anyone that's listening, I want to tell you that I say that line a lot. I don't know why. I think it's so stupid, but if you think about it, it's so ridiculous. It's funny, but when like jokingly, like Zach and I was just being silly. I'll be like, yours with a twirling lawnmower. And I remember the first time I ever said it to him, he was like, the fuck does that mean? So obviously that's a Nightmare on Elm Street reference. It's such a goofy line, but for some reason, since I was 8 years old, it has stuck with me. I just think about that one-liner all the time.
Your little Dave. Yours.
Yours with a twirling lawnmower, teacher. I don't know where that voice came from, but maybe that's what I sounded like when I was 8. I remember
like a cartoon character somewhere like that voice.
Yeah, it's saying just that too. We'll do like the animated family version of Nightmare on Elm Street.
Park-ish.
Yeah, well, hey,
a little bit.
Call me South Park people. So again, we're introduced to this group of friends. We realize that Rod and Tina are together, and also Nancy and Glenn are together. And they are talking about the dreams, and you kind of see Glenn react to them talking about the dreams, but no one other than Nancy and Tina admit that they are also having bad dreams. So Glenn ends up rushing to class when the bell rings because he's a little goody two shoes, and Tina yells at him as he's running away, and she's like, "Did you have a dream too?" And of course he didn't answer if he even heard her.
Yeah, typical boy.
Typical boy. So then we immediately cut to nighttime. Obviously, Wes Craven did not give a shit about what was happening in school that day. So cut to nighttime. We are now at Nancy's house. Or I'm sorry, we're at Tina's house. Tina's parents are out of town, so she's having her friends over, and they're going to have like a nice little sleepover. And Tina's like, "Oh, Nancy, I'm surprised your mom allowed you to stay here." And she's like, "She didn't." And Glenn's like, "Yeah, my parents didn't allow me to stay here either." And he said, "But don't worry, I have this really cool cassette tape I'm going to put into the boombox. I'm going to call my mom, and I'm going to pretend I'm staying at my cousin's house." So his cousin lives next to the airport. So Rod made him a mixtape, if you will, of sound effects. And he calls his mom. He puts the tape in the boombox. And because his cousin lives next to an airport, it is the sound of an airplane. So he's like, "Yeah, I'm staying in my cousin's house, whatever." He's like, "Sorry, it's loud here like always." But then all of a sudden the sounds on the tape go away from the airplane, and it's like a motorcycle, or like I think he makes a reference to there being like a drag racing thing going on outside. So he's like, "Oh yeah, sorry mom, they're drag racing outside. It's so weird." And then there's like a car crash sound, and then a woman screaming. He's like, "I think the neighbors are fighting next door." Like so silly, very very Ferris Bueller's Day Off, coming up with an idea how to lie to your parents. So but kudos to him. He tried, and the mom fell for it.
She really did.
Fell for it.
She did.
She did. Nancy even tried to help by turning it off, and it just made like crazy noises, and I don't know. There's a big explosion at the end. I love it. But the mom's like, "All right, cool. Have a good night." And Glenn's like, "See ya, mom. Love you. Bye." And hangs up. So the girls think it's hilarious. Glenn tried real hard. He obviously got away with it, so that's okay. Next thing we know, we hear they start talking about their dreams, and Glenn still does not admit that he's having a dream, but we have the girls, Nancy and Tina, talking about their dreams, and they realize they're dreaming about the same person.
Yep.
A guy in a red and green sweater with a kind of a burnt up face, and he has knives for fingers, and Nancy even goes, "Yeah," and then he goes, "Screech." And I was like, "Okay, Nancy, that's the best way to describe that sound." She was like, I think Tina describes them as fingernails, and Nancy says, "No, they're more like fingered knives," which obviously is what they are.
Yeah.
So, hey, Nancy, figuring it all out. We love it.
Yes, Nancy.
So as they're talking about it, we then hear that screechy sound in the background, and of course, Glenn's like, "Well, I'll go out and investigate." So the girls go with him. They go out there, and he's like, "See, there's nothing out here." And then, bam!
Frickin' Rod
jumps out of the shadows, scares the shit out of Glenn, tackles him to the ground. He's obviously been drinking and he wants to party with these guys. And Tina's like, let's go upstairs and we'll have my parents' room, and you, Nancy and Glenn, you guys can have my room, whatever. So they go do their thing. Of course, as described earlier, Tina and Rod are making love in the room next door, and I'm being tasteful, okay?
You are.
If anything, they're actually screaming at the top of their lungs, but whatever. They're making love. So Nancy and Glenn are listening to this. They have no way to avoid it because it's so loud. And once they finish, we cut away from Nancy and Glenn, and we are in the bedroom now with Tina and Rod. They have finished, and they're having a nice little chat. And she's talking about, I don't want to fight anymore. And he was like, no more nightmares for either one of us then. And they're like, wait, you had a nightmare too?
You had one too?
And creepy, right? So this group of friends, they're all sharing the same dream. They're picturing this man, and that we know obviously is Freddy Krueger. But they have no idea, what's going on. They have no idea who this person is. So as they roll over to go to sleep, we cut back to Nancy, and we see above her bed, which is Tina's room, there's a crucifix on the wall, and the crucifix actually falls off and lands in bed next to her. So Nancy's like, well, what the hell? So she picks up the crucifix, puts it back on the wall. We cut back to Tina, who's lying in bed, and she hears what sounds like pebbles being thrown up against the window. Did you ever go to someone's house and throw pebbles out a window?
Fuck no.
I'd be afraid I'm gonna break that shit.
No, that's like terrifying. If someone did that to me, I'd like pee my pants. Like that's crazy.
I'm gonna hire someone to go to your house and throw pebbles out your window.
God, I should never admit anything to Dave ever.
Mm-hmm. I love to scare people. So Tina hears these sounds. She tries to wake Rod up, and Rod is snoring. One of my favorite things about movies is when people are sleeping, they're not snoring, but then when someone tries to wake them up, they all of a sudden start snoring. That's one thing I noticed about this movie. It's like completely quiet. All you hear is a pebble hitting the window, and she's like, Rod, wake up. And she like shakes him, and he goes,
Right. Wouldn't you wake right the fuck up?
Yeah, she's shaking you, bro. But, they did just have like a marathon together, so.
They did.
He's sleepy. He's sleepy.
Yeah, he's sleepy.
So now Tina's going to investigate this pebble being thrown, and something hits the window, and it actually cracks the window open. So now there's like a little tiny hole in the window, and now she starts hearing, Tina.
That's so good.
So she's like, what the fuck? And then we cut immediately back over to Nancy, who's sleeping in bed, and the crucifix again is off the wall, and above her bed, we slowly see the wall start to come forward, and it's forming what we begin to know as Freddy. So we see his face and his hands, including his knife glove. If you look really close, you can kind of see the outline of the glove. One hand's a little bit bigger than the other one, and it's so tight on his face.
So one hand, the knives.
Mm-hmm.
Huh, okay.
Yep. Again, only 7 minutes of screen time in this movie. Once you get to the other films, you start seeing all this stuff a lot more.
Uh-huh.
But it's a really cool effect. I talked about it earlier. No CGI. They actually had some sort of like sheet in front of there, and they made it a little bit harder to kind of like pull off the fact that it's still technically a wall. But Robert Englund's actually not doing it. It's actually a stunt person who's doing this. But they kind of like peer out through the wall. They lean over Nancy and immediately disappear when she wakes up. So she wakes up kind of like, like when you wake up from a dream and you kind of like look around and you're like, whatever I was just dreaming, like, did that really just happen? So we assume that's what she was dreaming. And it's also Freddy kind of getting his power to come into the real world. So she picks the crucifix back up and puts it on the wall. She even like knocks on the wall. So obviously she was dreaming that, but she knocks on the wall to verify to herself that, no one's coming through the wall to get her.
You just said something that I didn't understand. So what do you mean he was getting his power to come into the world?
So Freddy lives off the fear of kids. So he slowly starts haunting their dreams, but the more scared they are, the more they talk about him, he becomes more powerful. And it's definitely described a lot better or explained a lot better again, it's like through the franchise, so you kind of like understand it a little bit better.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he gets the power from people being afraid.
Okay.
Yeah, so fear makes him grow stronger, and it also starts to blend. The stronger he gets, the dream world and the real world start to kind of blend together.
Yeah.
So you can even just be like a micro nap, like just being really vulnerable state, and he can slowly start to get you. And some of that stuff kind of plays in towards the end of the film too. Yeah, so cut back to Tina. She's going to investigate a strange noise or something, and she leaves the house. She starts walking down the side hallway. Guys, she's outside. She's walking down an alleyway, and she's walking. She keeps hearing Tina, Tina, and then finally emerging from the shadows is who we learn to be Freddy Krueger, and we actually see a little bit of his face here. And at first, the first time we like see his full body, his arms are actually outstretched, so they're really long. What did you think about that, Lauren?
I don't
think it was cool, corny. So good. So when he emerges from the shadows, the first time you see him, he's still hard to make out. So he's still covered in the shadows, but he's emerging from the alleyway, and his arms are like 3 times the length that normal arms are.
Why did I miss this?
So he's touching one side of the alleyway and then the other side of the alleyway with his glove, and he's running his knife fingers along that, so it's making the screechy sound.
I don't recall.
Okay, that's okay. Then she's kind of like, what the hell? And he kind of like comes into the light a little bit, and you see his face, obviously all burnt up. And Tina says, "Oh God," and he goes, "This is God." And he puts his like glove up to his face, like this glove is what obviously is going to rip you open. Yeah. And then he starts running after her, and I do see a lot of people that see this movie for the first time make fun of the way Tina runs and make fun of the way Freddy runs. Do you remember this?
Nancy runs the worst.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll talk about that part too. So, well, this will cover the Nancy part too. So the reason Wes Craven did stuff that way was because, you know, when you dream and you're trying to run from a bad guy, you almost feel like you can't move anymore. So he wanted it to look like they're kind of like running in place, not really moving. So making Freddy a little faster and them a little bit slower. Well, so that's why it almost looks like they're like running slower in place. Yeah, and then
I was like,
girl, so that was his
doing. You need to run.
It's like she's almost like jogging in place, but still moving like 1 foot forward. Like that's kind of like.
It makes me feel better that was on purpose now, because I was like, girl.
Yeah, I think again. Yeah, I think people that see the movie for the first time, they're like, "What the hell? Why is she running like that, weirdo?" But then you have Freddy in the background, and he's running like a monkey, kind of. I don't know if that was intentional or it was like meant to be like weird or creepy looking, but if you see him in this scene and he's running, he's kind of like, only Lauren can see me moving, but he's kind of like moving like this. And I'm like Freddy, why are you running like that? What are you doing, bro? But he's obviously catching up to her. He gets super close, and then bam, he now is in front of her. So she runs into him, she screams, turns back around, goes running, and then goes back into her backyard. And as she's running closer and closer to the house, Freddy then emerges again from behind the tree, and he says, "Tina." And she stops and looks around, and he says, "Watch this." And he puts his hand that doesn't have the glove on up in the air, and then he uses his knife hand to slice off 2 of his fingers. And then this little like green colored blood starts spraying everywhere. What did you think about that, Lauren?
Very Nickelodeon. The green slime. Yeah.
Green slime, yeah. Yep. So what we learn here is that he is filled with Nickelodeon slime. That's his blood. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so I mean, obviously, again, we're in the dream world, and you know, her mind's perceiving Freddy with having this green blood, even if that is his blood or not 100% sure, but we definitely get a little bit more of it later. So he does that to show, like, you know, what this knife glove can do. And right after he does that, he lunges towards her. They start kind of wrestling a little bit. He's about to kill her, and then she pulls him. I'm sorry, she doesn't pull him into the real world, but she is slowly waking up in bed, and this wakes Rod up, and he looks over, and he sees the figure of someone on top of Tina underneath the sheets. So he goes to rip the sheets off. Obviously, Tina's screaming. He rips the sheet off, expecting to see someone on top of Tina, and there's no one there. But we are seeing what Tina's seeing, and that is Freddy Krueger on top of her. She's screaming on top of her lungs, and then she reaches up to his face to like put her hand on his face, and she ends up pulling his face off to reveal a skeleton. Creepy.
Yeah.
Again, practical effects. But then he automatically goes right back to regular Freddy face. So Rod freaks out. He jumps up, gets out of bed. She's screaming, "Help me, Rod, help me." She's kind of like thrashing around in bed. And then all of a sudden, she gets those 4 cuts right across her bare stomach. So her nightgown kind of tears open, and then you just see the gash from Freddy's glove. And he slices her open, and then he starts pulling her and dragging her along the wall up onto the ceiling. This is a really cool scene.
I thought so too.
Very
a modern dance routine.
I would love to see someone make like an interpretive dance to this scene, like recreate the scene, but with dancing. That's so funny. So they did the scene in a really cool way. So they actually flipped this room upside down, and in terms of everything was upside down, and it was like a rotating room, and they actually ended up using that rotating room later on in the movie for another death scene. But the scene's very iconic. I mean, she's being dragged by an invisible force. If we were there in the room with her, she's just being dragged on the side of the wall up to the ceiling, just leaving a trail of blood. Rod is just like, what the fuck is going on? Like he's definitely in shock. I mean, you can tell that he wants to help, but at the same time, he has no idea what's going on.
How can he help if you can't see what's doing this to her? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's cool they kind of jump back and forth to us seeing Freddy doing this, and then also what Rod's seeing, which is in the real world that no one's there. So Tina's obviously still in a dream state, but her body is being murdered in real life. And that obviously is the basis of A Nightmare on Elm Street. So finally, Tina falls to the bed in a big pool of blood. Blood splashes everywhere around the room, including all over Rod. During his screaming, this wakes Nancy up. Nancy and Glenn go running to the room, and the door is locked. We keep hearing Rod say, "Oh God, Tina, oh God." And then after a couple of seconds, Glenn finally breaks into the room. They emerge into the room. There's blood everywhere. Tina's dead body over on the side, but the window's open, and Rod has escaped. Whew. What a bloody good time.
A bloody good time.
A bloody good time, if I do say so myself. I got all the voices today, guys.
You really do.
No, what's happening? So in this moment, we kind of already assume as an audience, we're like, oh shit, they're gonna think that Rod did this. And we immediately cut to the cops, and we are introduced to John Saxon's character, which is Lieutenant Thompson, and that is good old Nancy's dad.
Her dad, yeah.
And he's kind of getting a little bit of background information as he's walking into the police station about this murder that just happened. That the information they got was that Rod and her had a fight earlier that day. Rod was in the room with her but disappeared, so they assume that Rod is the one that murdered him. And he was like, what was she doing there? And when he says that, he's actually meaning his daughter, because he knows that Tina and Nancy are best friends, and Nancy wasn't supposed to be there. So he emerges into the room where Nancy is with Nancy's mother, so his ex-wife. And so Marge, she is Nancy's mother. What do you think about Marge?
Gosh. Marge is like the mother in Terrifier to me.
Yeah. I mean, you're honestly not wrong.
She is a space cadet. She is. She's a space cadet. To me, like in the 80s where there's some movies where people are like torn about how to like act. Like, I feel like she's like still trying to act like it's the 50s and 60s. Do you know what I mean? Like she has that like style,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no. That's a good observation too.
Yeah.
She's very aloof.
Yeah.
Like that. Obviously an alkie.
Yes, major alky. And very I found her very dramatic, and I felt like Nancy's the one that has to take care of her.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely, yeah, she's definitely at this moment in time, we don't really know this yet, but as the film progresses, we definitely see she's definitely like a tortured soul. She obviously is obviously a single mother. Obviously, Nancy's dad is in her life, but she lives with her mother. And because Marge is definitely a raging alcoholic, because this woman, guys, she has bottles of alcohol hidden all over this
all over
house.
the house.
I think this is the only scene in the movie other than a funeral that she doesn't have alcohol in her hand and or hidden in the same room with her.
Yep.
So poor Marge. But that's a serious situation, and I hope she ended up getting some help. But
Well,
yeah, Marge is
someone
Marge.
helped her.
So someone did help her.
Yeah.
So in the scene, we as an audience are getting a little background too of the relationship between her parents, and the dad doesn't quite understand why Nancy was there. The mother didn't know anything about it, and of course Nancy's all upset. Her best friend just got murdered. So
Not upset enough, I don't think. I mean, I find this a common theme in all horror movies. Like they're just not upset. Like she goes to school the next day. It's just I don't know. I mean, I would be out for months, and if my best friend, you know what I mean?
mhm.
It's a common the underreactions in horror films to me is a common theme.
I know, I get that, and I do feel like I feel the same way sometimes. It's a wonderful thing about movies that sometimes we think that they should definitely be played a little bit differently in situations like that. But I agree. I think they're trying to build Nancy. I'm not sticking up for it, but I do think they're trying to build Nancy as like a very strong female. So I think it's her like I have to I can't sit and sulk about this. I lost my friend, but I need to go do things to get my mind off of it. I need to get to school, get my education, and maybe like push it to this. I don't know. Definitely not. She needs to feel it for sure.
Earn enough money to buy Johnny Depp a second half of his shirt.
Yes. Oh, the outfit. We'll definitely talk about that later too.
We have to.
Yeah. So her dad basically is like, Rod killed Tina, and Nancy's like, no, there was, Rod said there was somebody else in the room. I believe him. Whatever. Quick cut. Next morning, we see Nancy's house, and this house is very prominent throughout the entire film. One thing about the house, though, if you see this house, the house that they live in, if you see it in like pop culture type references, the front door is red. In this movie, the front door is blue. But in every sequel this house is shown, the door is always red. So I don't know what it is, but that red door is what stuck throughout the entire franchise, other than this first film. So
interesting.
It's a fun fact. Yeah, just a fun fact. Yeah, so it's the next morning. We see their house. Nancy is coming downstairs, obviously getting ready to go off to school. She hears the television in the kitchen that her mother is watching while she pours herself some vodka. And keep in mind, this is right before school starts, so we're talking probably 7 a.m. So mom is starting the day off.
She's boozing it up already.
Boozing it up. So Nancy's walking into the kitchen, and they have a news report of the murder of Tina's death, and they actually on the screen they showed the Tina in the body bag, and Tina's arm like falls out of the body bag.
I know. Which kind of calls like forward.
Yes.
In that hallway scene when her hand is like, I don't know why, but like that really stuck with me when they're like, that invisible person is dragging her down the hallway.
Mm-hmm. Sure. No, I actually like that connection. That is one thing that I feel like I never made a connection with in the past, but more recently I did, is that same exact thing you just said. But I feel like that's how our minds work when it comes to dreams, right? So she's dreaming about Tina, but she had already saw the image of Tina's arm falling out of the body bag. So her mind then recreated that in what she's seeing in her dream. So the more I think about it, and like, I love the fact that you called it out, because that is, I think, what the intention was. And even if it wasn't the intention, that is definitely how our mind works.
Yeah.
So good little callback there. But Nancy's basically like, I'm going to school. Her mom's like, I don't think you should. And she's like, you need to stop drinking coffee. You need to sleep. And she's like, you don't look good. You look tired. And she's like, I need to go to school. I need to get my mind off things. So Nancy heads off to school. As she's walking to class, she notices some man watching her. She looks back, sees this man. She keeps walking, looks back again. The man is gone. The man looks like a private detective of some kind. So we assume that, since her dad is, a lieutenant, that he has someone watching her, making sure everything's okay. Because Rod's on the run. So she looks back again, and that person's gone. And just as she notices that person's gone, someone emerges from the bushes, and it's Rod. And Rod pulls her into the bushes, and he tells her, he's like, it wasn't me. She's really scared at first, but at the same exact time, she kind of gives in to him, like, I believe you. And he explains, like, there was somebody else in the room. There was something I could do. And then he talks about how he noticed 4 simultaneous cuts going across her body. And she's like, what do you mean? Like at the same time, like, what do you mean? And he's like, I don't know. So that she immediately thinks of the glove that she's been seeing in her dreams. And just as he feeds her all this information, we hear a gun cock and load, and we reveal Nancy's dad. He's there, and he says, put your hands up, Rod. He goes running. He runs away from the lieutenant, and Nancy stands in front of her dad and tells him to stop.
That was crazy to me. I'm like, and the reaction from the dad being like, Jesus Christ.
Yep. Yeah, and like, again, I feel like Wes Craven was really trying to write a strong woman here. I mean, she knows that Rod didn't do this, and her friend was just murdered. Her dad's trying to pin it on the wrong guy, so she stood between that gun and said, "Stop! Like, this is not who you're following." And of course, he doesn't know any better, so this makes him mad. But of course, there's other police officers involved, and Rod ends up getting arrested and taken away. So cut back, Nancy's finally in class. She's at school. She's in class. This is English class. They're talking about Hamlet and a couple other novels they're talking about. But the teacher here is Lynn Shay. Do you know? I think you've seen a horror movie. So she's in a lot of horror movies. And one movie I think you did see, not me asking you to watch it, but I think you've seen it before. You've seen Insidious? No? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you saw Insidious before.
No.
Well, another movie to add to the list, guys. But again, Lynn Shay is actually in a lot of horror movies. So this is one of her, I don't think this is her first film, but this is one of her earlier movies. And because this film's so iconic, it's like, oh, like when you look back at it, you're like, oh, Lynn Shay's in this. So very small part, obviously just the teacher in the English room. But while we're in class,
bigger part in Insidious.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. We'll do Insidious one day. The teacher calls on a guy to come up and start reading a passage from a book, and this obviously puts Nancy to sleep. It would same.
He's like,
I fall asleep too. So
thou hast been
to thy own self be true.
Thou thus.
He's speaking so. He's so. I don't. His tone is just so weird. I don't know. But she starts to fall asleep, and she hears Nancy, and she looks over into the hallway, and she sees Tina standing up, but still in a body bag, covered in blood on the inside.
One thing that's like, I will say, out of everything, when they cut to Tina in a body bag, that is the one moment that I think really scared me in this whole movie.
Yeah, I think this scene's pretty cool, pretty effective. And so Tina's in this body bag. She's zipped up in the body bag. There's blood all inside the body bag. She kind of runs her hand along the lines, along the inside of the body bag, and Nancy. And when Nancy kind of like looks back to the classroom and then looks back, and now there's just a trail of blood. So of course Nancy's like, well, I'm gonna go investigate. She heads out into the hallway. She's following this trail of blood. And as she gets to turn the corner, as she's picking up speed, she runs into a girl who's wearing the same type of sweater that Freddy Krueger wears, the red and the green. and she's a hall pass, a hall monitor,
What
and
did
she asks Nancy
Nancy
for
say here? Because it
uh
was hilarious.
the hall monitor goes, where's your pass? And Nancy goes, screw your pass. So then as she says screw your pass and she starts running off, she turns around and she hears Freddy's voice now. She looks back, it's the same hall monitor, but now there's blood on the hall monitor's face, and she is wearing the glove, the knife glove. And in Freddy's voice he goes, no running in the hallway. Creepy, 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 creepy.
Creepy.
So yeah, so he says no running in the hallway. She sees the glove and she's like, oh, fuck. So she continues following Tina. She goes downstairs in the basement of the school, and she ends up in a boiler room. So obviously we know that she's dreaming, of course. None of this
They
stuff is
always
actually
end up in a
happening.
boiler room.
Yeah. Yeah, so we get a little backstory in the boiler room stuff a little bit later.
Oh,
But
really?
she ends up in the... Yep. Uh-oh. Oh, Lauren. Ladies and
Oh.
gentlemen, joke's on all of us. She did not watch this
No,
film.
I did. I literally just
Just kidding.
rewatched it right before this.
Wait. Well, I will say the one thing this movie lacks is I feel like they don't really tell the story, like the backstory, in enough details to like fully pull it all in.
Yeah.
So I think if you've only seen this movie, you don't get all the information I think you should have. If that makes sense. So she's finally in this boiler room, and now we start seeing Freddy stalking her. And Freddy shows up. He's in front of her, and he's kind of taunting her a little bit. He even like wags his tongue at her. He's like,
Yeah.
"Come to Freddy."
Yeah.
And, she's like, "You're not real. You're not real." And she screams. He goes to attack her, and she throws her hand on one of the super hot pipes, and it burns her arm. And when it does that, this wakes her up. You know, like when you're dreaming, you kind of like find a way to wake yourself up, or something happens that wakes you up. That's what happens to her here. So she wakes up in class, screaming top of her lungs. Everyone's like, "Whoa, what the fuck's happening?" And she's like, I gotta get out of here." And she pieces out. And the teacher's like, the teacher goes, "You'll need a hall pass." Nancy's outside the school. Nancy's like collecting her thoughts outside. She obviously wants to go home, and she's thinking about everything that just happened. And she looks down at her arm, and she notices she has an actual burn mark on her arm, in the same spot that she threw her arm onto that really hot pipe that woke her up. So that's interesting. So what happened to her in the dream actually happened to her in real life.
Transfused
Dun,
into
dun.
real life.
We're now in the real world, guys. So instead of going home, Nancy decides to go visit Rod. So she wants to get a little bit more backstory on what's happened here. And this moment is where Rod talks about seeing the simultaneous cuts. And this is when they really put all the pieces together that they are dreaming about the same person. This person is not a good person. And, she can't be in there too long. She goes to leave, and he's like, "You believe me, right?" And she's like, "Of course I do." And he's like, we can't go to sleep. I'm afraid to go to sleep. She's afraid to go to sleep. And then he ends her before she leaves. He's like, "Do you think I did it?" And she's like, "No,
No.
not at all." So she's 100% on Rod's side, and she'll definitely help out. She leaves the jail, and she goes home and pours herself a nice hot bath. So she's in the bath, and she's...
want to know where she got this bath pillow. I was like,
I feel like my mom had one of these when I was a kid.
Really? I'm like,
Yeah.
Gosh, that would make it so much more comfortable.
Mom, if you're listening, we need to know where you got that at.
We need to know where the bath pillow's from.
So Nancy's all cozy in this bathtub, and she's actually reciting the... what is it? The chant? Yeah. Those are the words. Yeah, so she's like, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. So she knows this nursery rhyme because it's obviously haunting her in her dreams, and she's slowly starting to fall asleep. And as she gets towards the end of the nursery rhyme, we get a really, really cool shot. So we're kind of like on the opposite side of the bathtub, water level, and she's lying in the tub. So we see in between her legs, very slowly, the finger knives slowly emerging from the water between her legs. And as it slowly starts to come up out of the water, we get the whole glove. We start to see the red and the green. It's getting closer to her. Just then, Marge, her mom, knocks on the door. She says, "Nancy." And she's like, "What, Mom?" Obviously this wakes her up. She's like, "Don't fall asleep in there. You could drown, And Nancy goes, "Oh, for Pete's sake." And then the mom goes, "I've heated up some warm milk for you." And then she goes, "Warm milk?"
I'm like, "Give me that warm milk." That's so thoughtful, Marge.
Well, Marge probably poured some vodka in there.
Like Kahlua or something.
Yeah, for sure.
Kahlua and warm milk.
I'm gonna go make some now. Just kidding. So Marge walks away with the warm milk, and Nancy's like, "Cool," and then she slowly starts to fall asleep. Just then, we start to realize that Nancy is falling asleep in this bathtub, and this is probably not going to be a good thing for her. And all of a sudden, the water kind of sloshes around a little bit, and then bam, she's pulled in underneath the water, and she's kind of like being pulled to like this really dark black abyss. And all she can see is a little bit of light coming through from what I'm assuming is the drain of the tub. So I think this is a really cool scene, really awesome visuals, definitely dreamlike. And it was actually filmed in a pool. So the upper shots obviously was a bathtub, and then when she's being dragged down in, they put like a partial piece of the tub on top of a pool, and they got these really cool shots. So Nancy's trying to get up out of the water, pull herself up. Freddy's dragging her down. Her mom hears her screaming for help, and Marge runs over and is banging on the door, and finally she breaks into the room. And just then Nancy wakes up from her dream. She pulls herself out of the water just as her mom comes in. And one of my favorite parts about this scene is, so the mom jumps into the room. She's finally in there, and she's like, "Honey, I heard you screaming. Is everything okay?" The mom is out of breath. She literally cannot catch her breath. All she was doing was pounding on the door and trying to open it up. Nancy was fighting for her life, but Nancy's just all calm, and she's like, "It's okay, Mom. I fell asleep, but I'm fine. I had a bad dream. It's fine. Everything's fine." So she's like super happy that everything is okay. But what did you think about this scene when you first saw it?
This is one of the scenes that it did remind me. Now that I'm like thinking about it again, it is very Stranger Things like. I didn't really know when I was watching it she was being pulled down into some like other world, I guess I could say. But
Yep.
I don't understand why Nancy like played it off to her mom afterwards either.
Yeah. Right.
So I don't know. I thought it was definitely that claw coming up was scary as fuck, but yeah. Oh shit. It destroyed my laptop.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't destroy it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Nancy decides that she absolutely 1000% cannot fall asleep. So she gets some medicine from the cabinet and helps her stay awake. She now is lying in bed. She's obviously fighting sleep. She's watching a horror movie, which is actually Evil Dead.
Okay. I was wondering if like she was watching something like a famous horror movie or something like that. Also, why, if you're scared right now, are you watching a horror movie? Why? Put on Sesame Street. Like, what are you doing?
See, I feel like I'd be the same way. I'd be like, well, gotta watch how these people survive these horror films because this is my life.
If I watch something intense, I'm putting on Bob's Burgers or I'm putting on Seinfeld. Right after.
Oh yeah, Seinfeld tonight.
Right after.
Seinfeld tonight for you. So Nancy's watching this TV. She's obviously trying to stay awake. She took her pill, and she hears a noise outside, and Glenn is at her window. So we learn that Glenn, her boyfriend, lives across the street, and we assume it's on Elm Street. We actually never hear
that
Elm Street in this film at all.
Yeah,
so not one time is Elm Street ever mentioned. But Glenn is outside of her window. He sneaks up like the what is like the trellis of where all the
Yes.
roses are.
Yes, that's correct.
So he sneaks up there, he taps on her window, she's very Rapunzel, and he's coming to her aid, and she says a line. So he comes into the room, and she's like, like, thanks for hanging out with me. And she looks in like a mirror, and she's like, God, I look 20 years old. I'm like, okay.
I also want to say I love how annoyed Nancy gets with Glenn all the time. I think it's hilarious. Oh, yeah. It's so funny.
Yeah, she looks very tired, so she says, "Oh God, I look 20 years old." Fun fact: Heather Langenkamp was around 18 or 19 years old when this film was made. So literally, she looks 1 or 2 years older than what she actually is. In the screenplay, Tina is written as being a 15-year-old. So they're obviously old enough to drive. So I definitely think they're in like the 16, 17-year-old range here. So she felt like she looked a couple years older than what she is. So she asks Glenn while he's in the room, do you feel like people can predict what's going to happen? Like, do you think their dreams can predict what happens? He's like, no. And she's like, do you believe in the she's like, do you believe in the boogeyman? And he's like, no. And she's like, well, I got a crazy favor to ask you. And he's like, uh-oh. And she's like, I want you to be like a guard. So she's like, I'm going to fall asleep, and then you're going to wake me up if anything weird happens. So he's like, okay, that's kind of weird. So she turns the lights out. And we immediately cut to her leaving the house. So we can definitely assume that she's probably sleeping because she's on her own. So she's walking away from her house, and she kind of like looks back. She's walking down the street. She turns into like a shed type thing, and then across the street is the police station. And she looks back and she asks Glenn if he's still there watching her, and he like emerges from a tree, and he's like, yeah. So this is obviously in her dream world. She goes over to the police station. And at the police station, she's looking down on Rod, so we can see into his jail cell, and we see Freddy Krueger come into the room, and he is kind of like invisible in a way, and he goes through the actual bars of the jail cell, and he's like hovering over Rod, and he's like laughing, looking up at her, and this freaks her out, of course, and she thinks that something bad's gonna happen to Rod, but she sees Rod wake up. So when Rod's waking up, Freddy's no longer in that room, and she hears her name, and she turns around. And there's Tina again in her body bag, and we have a centipede crawls out of her mouth. There's like snakes all around her bottom of her. She's super gross. This freaks Nancy out. She goes running, trying to head back home, and we hear Freddy coming up behind her. And just as she gets into the house, she starts to go running up the steps, and the stairs are like glue, so she can't get up the steps fully.
Freaked me out. Holy!
So you jump.
You saw me jump?
Yeah, I did.
He just like jumped onto the back of the couch. Chewy, oh my God. Okay.
Not Chewy, you're scaring the shit out of your mom.
I
know. So Nancy's trying to make it up the steps, and the steps are, so they actually use Bizquick to make the...
I was wondering.
So they use Bizquick to make the steps the way that they are. So when she's running up the steps, her feet are like sinking into the stairs, and it's like pulling what we know is Bizquick. It's pulling the stairs up, so it's like glue, so it's like holding her back. And as she's trying to make it up the stairs, there's like a little window in the door. The window smashes open, and Freddy kind of pokes his head through the window, but he's wearing Tina's face.
Yeah.
He's like, see, and Tina's face like slides off of his, and he lets himself into her house. She runs up to her bedroom and slams the door shut, and he comes running and jumps through the mirror at her. They're wrestling on the bed. He's trying to attack her with his knife glove. He ends up like slashing all of her pillows. We have feathers going everywhere. They're fighting, and finally she wakes up. Glenn's asleep. Glenn fell asleep. He's not a good guard.
Fucking Glenn,
man.
Yeah.
She's like, I asked you to do one thing, and then Marge ends up knocking on the door. Glenn goes to run away, and she's like, just go to sleep, Nancy, And just then Nancy sees a feather floating around the room. So she's like, that's really weird. Cut back to the police station. Nancy and Glenn are at the police station now, letting them know they think something bad is about to happen to Rod, and they want him to go check. They want them to go check on him. They're kind of hesitant at first. The police don't understand what's happening. Her dad emerges, and he was like, everything's fine. And she's like, you need to go check on him. Like, do it for me, Dad. And as this is happening, we see Rod in bed, and the blankets, we don't see anyone doing it, but the blankets are kind of forming like a rope, and that rope is slowly going around Rod's
That was
neck.
so creepy.
Right, and he wakes up, and he's being pulled now by this, and it's almost like a noose in a way, and it's pulling him across the room. He's trying to fight back, and it ends up pulling him all the way up, and it ends up making him look like he hung himself in the jail cell. And just as he dies, Nancy and the rest of them come into the room, and of course he's dead. So it looks like a suicide, and of course, the police are looking at this as that, so they don't think there's any weird foul play or anything. So super crazy. Cut to the funeral. It's Rod's funeral. Everyone's there, all super sad, and they kind of have like at the end of the funeral, they have a conversation, Marge and Lieutenant Thompson, and it's kind of like, we need to figure out what's going on with our daughter. And she's like, I'm gonna go get her help. So Marge takes her to a sleep clinic, and here at the clinic, they want to study her sleeping habits. And once she falls into a nightmare, she starts thrashing around, and doctor's like freaked out, never seen this before. It happened so fast. And he immediately runs to her aid and wakes her up. And they try to give her a shot to put her back to sleep. And she, of course, refuses, freaks out. Yeah, she's like, I'm not doing this, guys. But when she wakes up, she has a long gray streak in her hair from all the stress from the dream. So she has this long gray streak, but she also pulled the hat off of Freddy's head and brought it into the real world. Creepy. So the mom's like, where did you get this at? And she's like, I pulled it from my dream. Cut to the next day. It's morning time. Mom's drinking some vodka, and Nancy emerges into the room. We see as Nancy's arriving into the room that Marge was holding on to that hat, but she quickly puts it into the drawer and tries to hide her vodka.
Well, yeah, that's what I thought she was doing. She's trying to hide her vodka.
She's hiding a lot of things right now. So when Nancy walks into the room, she's like, what's going on, Mom? Like, you had like a weird reaction to the hat and all this stuff. And she says, what do you know about this? I feel like you're acting weird. And she was like, I pulled this from my dream, Mom. And she pulls the hat out of the kitchen drawer. She's like, I pulled this from my dream. And her mom's very like hesitant. She's like, this is not happening. This is not real life. And she's like, it is real life. I'm holding the hat in my hand. And the hat even has a name written on the inside, and it says Fred Krueger.
Fred Krueger.
And she's like, who's Fred Krueger, Mom? Do you know who Fred Krueger is? And she was like, you'll never be hurt by Fred Krueger, I promise. She's like, what do you mean? Like, I have these cuts on my hand. I have a burn mark from the dream. I pulled out a hat from the dream. And her mom's like, you just need to calm down. And then Nancy says, I don't need sleep. I need to just figure all this out. Like, I want to figure it out. And she's like, or maybe I just need something like this bottle. And she grabs, she says, I need something like this bottle and I can veg out with you. And her mom slaps her right across the face.
I know. Such a fake slap, but.
Such a fake slap. Fun fact, though, they actually did a lot of takes of that. And in the beginning of the takes, she actually slapped Heather Langenkamp.
I don't think I could do that. Like, if you were acting, I think they only did it. Like, could you actually slap somebody?
I don't know. So in Cruel Intentions, one of my favorite movies, there's a scene where Reese Witherspoon slaps Ryan Phillippe across the face. That wasn't in the script. And the only reason it happened is because both of them were so into the part and into the conversations that they were having and their emotions that Reese Witherspoon said that it just happened. Like, that was her reaction to the conversation and the moment that was happening. So the slap was real and it wasn't scripted. And you can see Ryan Phillippe just kind of like, the fuck?
Yeah.
But then they just kept going. So they just kept going with it. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That is cool.
Yeah. So Marge slaps Nancy, and then she was like, Freddy Krueger can't come after you, I promise. And she goes, he's dead. And Nancy's like, I don't believe you. And then she goes,
knew something about him.
Yeah. And she's like, I knew you knew something. Like, and you made me act like I was crazy all this time. And she's like, Nancy, there's something wrong with you. Like, none of this is happening. And she ends up knocking the vodka bottle out of her mom's hand. She's pissed.
Smashing it
all over the floor. But don't worry, there's like 87 other bottles in that house hidden somewhere.
Oh, I just dropped my phone. Yeah, there's one in the closet with the towels.
Yep. The linen closet vodka.
Yeah.
We cut to a little date that Glenn and Nancy are having, and they're having conversation about dreams. and Glenn tells her that there's some really, really cool things about dreams that a lot of people don't like really think about. And she's like asking him like different ideas, and she was like, he's like, you can, I forget what he uses the term as. He's like, instead of like getting all crazy, like use them. This is how people like come up with art. Like sometimes people write down their dreams and they come up with songs and stories and things like that. And Nancy's like, well, what if you're being stalked by a monster in your dream? And he's like, well, then you have to turn your back to that monster and say like, I know you're not real. And she's kind of like, well, what do you mean? So he kind of like explains it to her a little bit better. He's like, you have to turn your back on it, and it takes away the energy, and that monster will disappear. And she goes, well, what happens if you don't turn your back and the monster doesn't disappear? And he's like, well, then you probably won't wake up from your dream. So little does Glenn know that is very real. So he asks her what she's reading because she's carrying a book with her, and she's reading a book about booby traps. And he's like, well, that's a weird book to be reading. And she's like, it's fine, whatever. She comes home from their date. It's the sun setting, and she approaches her house and notices that there's bars all over the windows.
Marge has gone crazy.
Marge has gone crazy. She knocked down the trellis so Glenn can't come into the room. Again, bars on the windows, whatever.
Bars
so she goes. They're that extreme. Nancy goes in the house and slams the door shut. She goes, "Mother!" Is very, very angry. And then Marge kind of comes out of the shadows, and she's lighting a cigarette.
I know.
And
I feel like
she's like,
she lights a cigarette in like the weirdest times, like in that dream when they go to that dream doctor.
Yeah. So she emerges from the shadows. She's lighting up a cigarette, and she's like, "What are the bars on the windows, Mom?" And she's like, "Security." She's like, "Security from what?" She's like, "Not what, who?" She's like, "Follow me to the basement." So Marge takes her down to the basement, and we learn the backstory about Fred Krueger. We learn that Fred Krueger was a child murderer. He murdered 20 kids. They were kids all around the area that they live in. And because there was someone signed the wrong papers, didn't do the right signatures on paperwork, once they caught Fred Krueger and he got arrested, he ended up getting off scot-free, being able to leave because people didn't do their job correctly. So all the parents, we assume on Elm Street, stalked Fred Krueger down. He ended up in a boiler room, and while they were down there, they had him enclosed and trapped in there. They ended up lighting him on fire and burning him alive. So all the parents killed Fred Krueger.
I just want to know, how did Nancy, I mean, I know she probably was young, but like if 20 kids die, like that's something you're going to remember.
Sure.
Or hear about when you're growing up. So that's, I don't know. I thought that was weird because I'm like, oh, well, maybe Marge was like 17 and they were the kids. No, like they were the parents at that time. She explains. And I'm like, how does Nancy know nothing about this? I don't know.
That's true. I guess I never really thought about that.
Yeah.
Plot hole. But her mom's like, oh, and then I kept his glove. So she actually has his glove.
Why, Marge, are you doing this? Why?
All right, come on, Marge. Come on. So this is our backstory on Fred Krueger. It's my thing though. It's just like really quick. It doesn't really give you a ton of information. Like you get the basics, but I feel like they could have went a little bit more in depth. But also on the flip of that, I think it's cool that they didn't rely on like crazy flashbacks, because we do end up getting that throughout the series, which is fine. But they would just rely on the storytelling. I just feel like the storytelling in this moment could have been a little bit better with a stronger backstory, like a better understanding of the backstory.
Well, they were trying to get you hooked for the second one.
Yeah, right. So then Marge ends everything with, see, honey, he can't hurt you because mommy killed him.
I know. I was like, okay. Odd thing
like
to say.
Such a weird line, but like I get it. Like she's a mom, so whatever. She was protecting her child. But we then cut to Glenn. Glenn's wearing his outfit. You want to talk about that for a second?
He's wearing a crop top, like a little jersey, like crop top situation. Mm-hmm. Hair's all like rustled, and
So Glenn's wearing his little outfit. He's in his room. He's watching TV. Nancy calls him. They live across the street from each other again, or they still live across the street from one another. So again, they can see one another from their windows, and they're talking on the phone. And she's like, "I'm coming up on my 7th day of no sleep." And he's like, "Whoa, like that's not good. Like, what's the record?" She's like, "Don't worry, it's 11, so I'm fine."
Yeah.
So she's got 7 full days of no sleeping, and she was like, "I want to do another plan. I want to do the same exact thing. I want you to wake me up at midnight. If you don't hear from me, I'm gonna go try to get this motherfucker out of the dreams." So he's like, "Okay, cool. Like, I got you." He goes and lays down in bed. He's listening to music. So he has his headphones. He's listening to music, but he's also watching TV. He has like one of those little old school TVs. He has it resting on his stomach. He's kind of hanging out. So he has until midnight. So I think it's like 20, 30 minutes. Nancy's going to try to fall asleep. So while this is happening, we see Nancy. She's lying in her bed when her mom comes in. Her mom wants to come into the room, and she takes away her coffee pot and stuff. And she's like, "You're going to go to sleep now, okay?" So she leaves the room, and Nancy's like, "Good night, Mom." And whenever she closes the door, Nancy springs up from her bed, and she pulls out a coffee maker from underneath her bed.
She pulls out a whole ass coffee maker.
Yeah. Yeah, so her mom got rid of the coffee maker that was out in the open, but Nancy learned from her mom, you can just hide your beverage of choice wherever you want to. So she has a whole coffee pot underneath her bed with a cool coffee cup, and she starts chugging it. We cut back over to Glenn's family. His parents are downstairs talking about how they don't trust Nancy. They think she's a little crazy, and they don't want Glenn to be around her anymore. Nancy goes to escape her bedroom and notices her mom is drinking vodka in the hallway from the linen closet. So Nancy calls over to tell Glenn like she can't get over there, so there had to be like a little change of plans, but midnight's still on. So when she calls over to Glenn's house, Glenn doesn't hear it because he's listening to his music. So the mom answers the phone, and the dad tells Nancy like,
"Don't call here.
Nothing's important. Yeah, don't call here anymore. We're done." So all that happens, and Nancy's pissed, so she can't get a hold of Glenn. She tries again, and the phone just rings because the dad took the phone off the hook. Very old school. She hangs up the phone, and then the phone rings, so she thinks it's Glenn. She answers it, and she hears the screeching from Freddy Krueger's glove. So now we know Freddy's getting more powerful. He's getting closer and closer to the real world. She rips the phone out of the wall, takes it out, like there's no power to this phone anymore. She wraps it up and throws it on the bed, and she's like, "Damn it, now I really can't get a hold of Glenn." As she starts to walk away, the phone rings. Even though there's no power source to the phone, it starts to ring.
Very scream.
She walks over and picks up the phone, and when she picks up the phone, we hear, "Your boyfriend now, Nancy."
Oh my God, the scene! Oh my.
Yep, and it's the mouthpiece of the phone is actually Freddy's mouth, and he sticks his tongue out and like wiggles his tongue at her face, and it's right up against her lips because the way she's holding the phone. Yeah, and he says, "I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy."
And vomit just thinking about this.
Yep, she tosses the phone, and she's like, "Shit." We cut back over to Glenn, and we hear the TV signing off, which means at this point in time, when TV used to go off the air at certain times, we know that it's now midnight. And just
I love how you had to explain that.
Do you remember those days? I feel like even like when we were younger, there was some like TV stations that would shut off early.
Oh,
do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely have to explain it to anyone that's younger than us listening and probably like, "What the fuck? What do you mean? There wasn't 24-hour television?" So just then, as Glenn has fallen asleep, while he's sleeping, all of a sudden, Freddy's glove emerges from underneath the bed, and he pulls Glenn down into the bed. He pulls the TV, the music, and everything. There's a pause. Glenn's screaming, but he's being pulled down. He disappears, and all of a sudden, gallons and gallons of blood just exploding from the hole in the bed where Freddy pulled Glenn into. Blood smearing all over the place, flying everywhere. His mom comes into the room, sees blood just going everywhere. She screams, and it's a bloodbath, like literally a bloodbath.
This moment.
Yeah, so it's a geyser of blood, guys. Like there's just blood flying everywhere.
There's not enough blood in Glenn's body for all this blood.
No. These people had blood from very weird sources. But needless to say, Glenn is dead. And Nancy knows this. Nancy knows because it's midnight. She hasn't heard from Glenn. She can feel it. Yep.
Yeah.
we see like the aftermath. There's blood everywhere. It's leaking from the ceiling. All the cops are there now, including Nancy's dad. And she calls over to Glenn's house and ends up talking to her dad on the phone. She brings up Fred Krueger. Her dad obviously has a reaction to this, and she was like, I know what I need to do now. I'm going to go find this man, and I'm going to bring him to you. Like, I know what I need to do. And she's like, please come and get me if you see anything weird happening. And her dad's like, okay, cool. Real quick fun fact, the sheriff, we meet him in this scene. The sheriff is played by Joseph Whipp, who is also the sheriff in Scream.
It's fun. Mm-hmm. That's so
connections. Yeah. So he's like, yeah, I got to keep an eye on my daughter. Can you make sure you keep an eye on her as well? Yeah, sure. Get a little montage of Nancy home alone style, setting up these booby traps all over the house for Freddy.
I was like Macaulay Culkin much.
Yeah. This came first, so I feel like Home Alone definitely copied.
That is very true. This came first. So. Yeah.
She goes over to see her mom, who is in her room, and she's like telling her mom, like, you should go to sleep now, because Nancy has like all these great plans and wants to make sure that her mom's not here to be a part of this. And her mom's like, I'm doing all this to protect you. Like, I don't want you to be a part of this world. And she says something very interesting. She says, the mom's like, I was just trying to protect you. And Nancy's kind of like, okay. And she's like, I didn't see how much you needed to know this. And Nancy's like, oh, gee, thanks, Mom. Don't know where you're getting at. She's like, you face things, Nancy. You face things. And that's your nature. It's like your power. It's your gift. You face things. But sometimes you need to learn that you have to turn away too. So this kind of, it paints the picture that she is a strong person, that we are seeing her do these, strong character type things. And she's also told by Glenn, like, you need to turn your back to this monster and let him know that he doesn't have the power anymore. So her mom goes to reach for some vodka, but then sets it back down.
She does.
So Nancy's like, I love you, Mom. She's like, I love you too, baby. So now Nancy's like in full, like, I'm going to make this shit happen. So she sets her alarm on her watch and she goes to sleep. We then see her coming downstairs. She goes to the basement and she goes to find the glove, but she realizes the basement just keeps going and it turns back into the boiler room that we've been seeing, a lot throughout the film. And during the sequence as she's moving through the boiler room, we're hearing the sounds of all of her friends who are dying. We hear like Glenn talking. We hear Tina. And then Freddy, of course, is in the shadows. We see like little tiny cuts here and there of him, and he is stalking her. So she ends up to the fire pit area of the boiler room where Tina first started off the movie, and Freddy jumps out at her and starts chasing her through the boiler room. She decides to jump off of a ledge in the boiler room, thinking this is going to wake her up, and this causes her to fall from the sky by her house, and she wakes up in the bushes outside of her house, and Freddy is not there, and she's like, fuck. And she looks down at her watch, and her watch is about to go off. So her alarm is about to wake her up, and now Freddy is nowhere near her. She's like, my plan's going to be ruined. Just then Freddy jumps up from the bushes, and instead of Nancy running from him, she goes to do what she needed to do, and that's she pounces on him. And he's kind of like, what the fuck? So she jumps on top of him, she wraps her arms around him, and next thing we know, her alarm goes off, and she wakes up. So she's thinking that Freddy Krueger's going to be in the real world now, and she wakes up in her bed, and she's alone. Freddy's nowhere to be found. She kind of sits up and looks around the room, and she's like, oh shit, this didn't work at all. And what happens next? Lo and behold, good old Freddy Krueger jumps up from the side of her bed, lunges at her. They kind of chase around the room. She runs out of the bedroom, slams the door shut, and puts one of the booby traps into shape right here. And she runs over to the window to try to get her dad's attention across the street. Freddy finally gets out of the room and he meets a sledgehammer right to the face. And he's like, ah, shit. And he ends up running down the steps after her, and he runs past the light, and it triggers another one of the booby traps, which is like an explosion of the light. And it startles Freddy, and he like falls over. Nancy breaks the window open. She's screaming for her dad. And at this point in time, the sergeant sheriff guy is like, well, I guess I better go grab him. Something weird's happening. Daughter's screaming, come help me, come help me. And finally he's like, oh, I guess I should do something about this. So she runs down to the basement. Freddy follows her, and they're kind of, playing like a cat and mouse thing. He thinks he's going to scare her, but she comes up behind him and breaks some gasoline on his back and sets him on fire. So she runs up the steps and he follows after her, just fully burning up. Follows her up the steps. I thought it was pretty cool. Obviously, a stuntman was just lit on fire and chasing after her through the house.
Well, and that wasn't him, was it? Robert?
No, definitely stuntman. I think at the time it held a record for one of the longest sequences to have somebody like on fire. So I don't know if that's a great record to be a part of, but
yeah,
I'm glad you're okay. I'm assuming the person's okay. So finally, her dad gets into the house and Nancy is there. She's safe, but we don't know where Freddy's at. Just then we see footsteps throughout the carpet, and these footsteps kind of burnt through the carpet, and there's like little flames, and it leads up the steps. Obviously, Freddy was on fire, so this is a trail of footprints to where Freddy's heading. And she's like, "Oh no, Mom!" And she runs upstairs and jumps into her mom's bedroom, and of course, Freddy's on top of Marge, and he's on fire, and now she's on fire. He's like laughing, and just then, her dad goes and throws a blanket on top and covers it up, pulls the blanket off, and her mom is now a skeleton and kind of going down into the bed, so disappearing off into the demon hell world or whatever.
Like,
and then
how many people does this poor girl have to lose? You know?
No. So Nancy, hoping that, this is still just part of the dream, she runs over to the bed and she starts like hitting the bed, hoping that, in some weird way her mom's still there. But of course she is gone, and her dad's like, "I'm so sorry." He's like, "I have to go back over." So he ends up leaving her there. So Nancy's all like trying to collect her feelings and stuff, and she's still in her mom's room. And just then behind her, she has her back to the bed. Behind her, very slowly, Freddy is underneath the sheets. So we see the sheets that have formed him behind her. So as an audience, we see him coming up behind her. And Freddy then slices his way through the sheets, and now Nancy can feel him behind her. And she says, "I know you're there, Freddy." And Freddy's just kind of like, "What?" And, yeah, he's kind of like taken back. And Freddy says, "You think you were going to get away from me, Nancy?" And she says, "Well, I know you too well now, Freddy." So now you made a good call. So everyone refers to him as Fred. He refers to himself as Freddy. And now she's calling him Freddy. And she says, "I know you too well now, Freddy." And he says, "Now you're going to die, Nancy." And she says, "Nope, I know your secret. You're not going to hurt me." She has her back to him. She says, "This is just a dream. You are not alive, and I no longer give you power. This whole thing is a dream. You are not real. I'm real." And she turns to him. So she turns to him, meets him head on, and she says, "I want my mother back. I want my friends back. I want everything back to normal." He's like, "You what?" And she's like, "I take back every bit of energy I ever gave you."
Damn. Well,
yeah.
Like saying that to an ex or something.
Yeah. And then she said, yeah. Then she goes, "You're nothing." And then she turns away from him again and she goes, "You're shit." So Freddy kind of like laughs like, "Bitch, I'm about to kill you." And he lunges towards her with his knife glove, heading right towards her. And just as he's about to get her, he kind of like turns into like static, I guess, and he just disappears into thin air. And Nancy kind of like looks back and she's like, "Hell yeah, I beat him." So she opens up the bedroom door, walks out, but instead of walking out into the hallway of her house, she is now walking out of the front door of her house, and her mom is walking out that front door with her. And she says, like, Nancy kind of like walks out like, "What?" She's like, "God, it's so bright out here." And her mom, is standing there as well. And she's like, "Yeah, it's going to burn off soon. Wouldn't be so bright. Are you feeling better?" And their mom's like, I'm feeling better. Like, I've decided I'm just going to be sober now." And she's like, "Wow, okay." So, their relationship seems different. Like, everyone seems happy. And then we hear a car pulling up. We see a car pulling up, and guess who's in that car? Who's in that car, Lauren?
It's Glenn and Rod and Tina.
Color of Freddy's sweater.
I'm like, so this isn't real? What is this? You need to explain this scene to me.
Yeah, so they drive off, and Nancy's freaking out. She knows what this is. That's Freddy's color of his sweater. So she knows that maybe we're in a dream world or we're in the real world. But Freddy's very much a part of what is about to happen. And just then we cut back to the mom. The mom's just waving in like a real like Stepford Wives type of way. Very robotic. She's like waving goodbye. and she's standing by the front door that has that window in it, and that window busts open, and we see Freddy's gloved hand come out and grab onto her neck, and he pulls her through the window. And of course, the body that gets pulled through the window is fake as hell. I've heard people refer to it as a sex blow-up doll looking thing. I don't think that's what it was, but it's kind of like what it looks like. So maybe that's what it was. Yeah. So kind of goofy. But the kids drive off in the Freddy car. Nancy's screaming. The mom gets pulled through the window. And then the screen cuts to black, and that is the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So Wes Craven wanted this to be a one-off film. The original ending of the film was very similar, but Freddy was not involved at the very end, and the ending was the happy ending. She got her mom back. Everything was a dream. So the whole thing was a dream. So she, by taking back all of that power, she got everything she wanted back and lived happily ever after with her life. Freddy was gone. She killed him. So Robert Shea, Robert Shea, head of New Line, wanted not to be a night like a happy ending. He wanted something a little bit more. Basically, he wanted to make a franchise out of this. He thought there was going to be potential. So he asked Wes Craven to shoot a new ending, and that new ending was very similar to the one that we got, but Freddy was actually in the car and he was driving. So when she looked over to Glenn, it was Freddy in the driver's seat, and then he laughs and drives off. So it was that was more obvious that her friends actually weren't alive because they disappeared and it was just Freddy in the car with her. Mm-hmm. And then she yelled for her mom, and her mom's just waving. That's how it ended. Mm-hmm. So then Robert Shea didn't really like that, so they kind of came up with this idea where it's kind of open-ended. It definitely is. It doesn't really give you the answer because we see all of them, but at the same exact time, because Freddy's very, very heavy in the scene, we do know that we are again in a dream world, so we know that Nancy's just going to have to fight Freddy Krueger off again. This is just another one of Nancy's dreams, and it's going to be a never-ending cycle, and she's always going to have to battle this guy. And of course, we got all these other films afterwards. So that is A Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984, 40 years ago.
Isn't that a name of a book?
I think so, maybe. I don't know. So do you feel a little bit different about the movie? Now we talked about it a little bit more. You got a little backstory. You feel about the same?
I'll give it a 5.5. No.
Oh, good. We moved up a little tiny bit. The needle moved a little.
Better than... Good.
But
5.5.
5.5. I'll take it. I love it.
I liked it. I'm interested to see where it's headed, and I am invested in these characters, so it's sad that they're not in the second one, but I just have to keep watching and see them in the third.
Yeah, definitely keep it going. Let me know whenever you watch them. I'd love to hear what you have to think. This film was ranked at 17 on Bravo's The 100 Scariest Movie Moments of All Time. Freddy Krueger was ranked at number 40 on the AFI 100 Heroes and Villains list. So this definitely is usually on a lot of people's list of favorite moments, favorite characters, favorite scenes, whatever. So I think that's pretty cool. And also, not too long ago, in 2021, the film was added to the National Film Registry. So it's a preserved film.
Ooh.
So yeah, very iconic. So yeah. Do you have anything else you want to talk about Nightmare on Elm Street wise?
I don't think so. I'm glad I watched it. It's just one of those movies you always hear about, and obviously I didn't really know who the villain was. Heard of Freddy Krueger, but didn't put two and two together. I'm glad I watched it.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you watched it too.
Yeah.
Again, one of my favorites, and obviously it's the origin story, so there's a lot more to follow. You get a lot more pieces thrown together. So, happy 40th birthday at Nightmare on Elm Street. Hopefully we get another entry in the series. I know it's been talked about for a long time. We do hope that Robert Englund gives Freddy one last go, and I would love to see what that looks like in 2024, 5 or 6 or whenever it happens. But I think it'd be pretty awesome.
Yep.
So
I agree.
Yeah. Well, everyone, thanks for listening. Lauren, thanks for being on this episode talking about all things The Nightmare on Elm Street, and I can't wait to hear what you think about the rest of the films. And maybe we'll do some more episodes on the series. So
yay!
Cool. Awesome. Well, Lauren, thanks for joining me again today. As always, I appreciate you. Everyone who's listening, I appreciate you as well. Catch us next time on another fun episode of the Reaction Shot Podcast. I, of course, am your host, Dave Herman. And Lauren, I'm sure you'll be back very soon.
Yes, I will be.
Yes. Hell yeah. All right. Well, everyone, have a great day or night or whatever it is that you're doing. Lauren, have a good night.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.